In a room illuminated only by the blue glow of computer screens, a lone figure sits hunched over a desk. For him, this was his entire reason for living, to become strong within this digital world. Inside that world, his avatar roars with determination, a fist blazing with fiery energy. He declares that this is the end for his foe, the Labyrinth King, Pharaoh, having finally reached this climactic moment. He had dedicated all of his time to this single instant, all for the goal of becoming the strongest. His fist hurtles toward the monstrous king. The blow connects with devastating force. Unleashing his ultimate technique, the Phoenix Fist, a fiery aura engulfs the Labyrinth King. The avatar's eyes are locked on his target, his fist clenched with absolute resolve. The attack is decisive. A notification declares the Labyrinth King Pharaoh has been defeated. Kazuya's avatar stands tall as onlookers marvel that he defeated the unbeatable boss using only his fists, proving his Fist King title was not just for show. This world, a place of knights, dragons, and monsters, is a virtual reality, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, known as Versus Online. Within this game, he had become something of a celebrity. He explains that he's stuck with the fist, considered the weakest weapon, and trained ceaselessly. Surrounded by other players, he recalls his ultimate achievement, defeating every single boss in the game just before its services were scheduled to end. His quest complete, the avatar stands in a quiet clearing and calmly initiates the logout sequence. The virtual world fades. In a starkly different reality, an emaciated Kazuya removes his headset, a faint, triumphant smile on his lips. He breathes a sigh of relief, having accomplished his goal just in the nick of time. He collapses, his emaciated body finally giving out. The last of his strength is gone. Lying on the floor, he dimly recalls that he hasn't eaten properly in about 2 weeks, his single-minded focus on the game having consumed him completely. As his consciousness fades into darkness, a final thought surfaces. He achieved his goal. With no regrets, he wonders if this is death. A faint sound seems to call to him from the void. Suddenly, a face fills his vision, a young man shouting for him to wake up. The voice belongs to a boy who tells him to hurry up and get ready. Kazuya, disoriented, questions who he is and where he could possibly be. A flicker of recognition crosses his mind as he observes his surroundings. The boy, his younger brother, calls out to their parents, announcing that Kazuya is finally awake. He looks on in disbelief, seeing his mother and father. He realizes with a jolt that he is in his parents' house. The thought is impossible. He remembers leaving home over 10 years ago. A desperate need for answers sends him scrambling towards a mirror. Staring back at him is not the face of a 30-year-old man, but a teenager. His own youthful face, untouched by the years he remembers living, stares back in shock. The reality crashes down on him. He screams in utter confusion, recognizing his own face, but from his teenage years. He questions how this can be, as he is supposed to be 30 years old right now. His shock gives way to a quiet breakfast with his family. A news report plays on the television, announcing the ongoing subjugation of monsters in Shinjuku. His father casually remarks that monsters have been appearing in the city lately, while his brother adds that it should be fine if the Adventurers Guild is in charge. The broadcast shows a terrifying close-up of a monstrous eye. His father wonders aloud if the creature escaped from a training ground. A full image of the beast, an evil boar, fills the screen. It is described as a large monster whose tusks are hard enough to pierce steel and are traded at high prices. His father whistles, remarking on its impressive size. The reality of the situation crashes down on Kazuya. Monsters exist in this world. Beside him, his brother shivers, murmuring how scary it is. Reeling from the revelation, he retreats to his room, trying to understand what is happening. On his desk, he finds a pamphlet, an enrollment guide for the Shizuoka Prefectural Swordsman First Middle School. He stares at the pamphlet, which advertises a school that seems to be straight out of a video game, complete with roles like swordsman, magic, and support. The brochure promises to teach students practical skills and techniques. As he puts the pieces together, Kazuya realizes there is so much he needs to confirm. In this world, you study at a school to subjugate monsters, and he is apparently about to enroll. He still doesn't know why he was brought here, but a new thought begins to form. A confident smile spreads across his face. He can fight here, just like he did in the game he used to play. In that moment, he decides he will become the Fist King once again. His mind conjures an image of this other world, a vast landscape where powerful, winged dragons soar through the sky above a snow-capped mountain. Now that he understands the nature of this reality, his path is clear. With newfound determination, he knows what he must do first. He immediately began to act on his new resolve, deciding it was time to gather intelligence. His search led him to information about a prestigious school for adventurers. He realized it was a middle school, and upon seeing the swordsman course he would be taking, he was taken aback, wondering what it entailed. The school's curriculum was laid out before him, detailing the different courses. The support course taught skills like heal and cure. The magic course offered fire arrow, and the swordsman course focused on abilities like bash. A dreadful realization washed over him. These were the exact same beginner skills from a game he had mastered. The thought that this world's adventurers spent 3 whole years learning what he considered basic movements filled him with disbelief. The revelation left him utterly demoralized. He collapsed onto his bed, face down, questioning the point of even attending such a school. He didn't want to go. As he lay there, another thought struck him. How could he check his own stats? He recalled that in the game, he would simply call out an icon to bring up the menu. Inspired by the memory, he sat bolt upright and, with all his might, shouted the command. Status. Open. His shout echoed, but nothing happened. His brother appeared, telling him to be quiet. Undeterred, Kazuya tried again and again, wondering if the command was different in this world. Frustrated, he sought out his mother and asked how to open his status. She immediately understood he was talking about the skill sheet, not a game. She handed him a physical document, reminding him to submit it at the entrance ceremony and not to lose it. He took the document and stared at it in disbelief. It was a formal skill results sheet bearing his name. He wondered what skills he possessed, only to find them listed plainly. Stamina recovery up level 2, sword proficiency level 2, and gun proficiency level 1. Kazuya stares at his status screen, his expression grim. He notes that his only skill is a stamina recovery boost, and that his weapon proficiencies are far too low. His father, standing beside him, notices his son's distress and asks what's wrong. The boy's face contorts in shock and despair. With such low scores, he realizes with dawning horror, he might not even be able to get into middle school. His father, however, offers encouragement, telling Kazuya to do his best and reminding him that he can learn more skills by going to school. But Kazuya remains unconvinced, his internal thoughts dismissing the idea as useless. He recalls his former glory as the Fist King, battling a colossal monster. Even if this new world is the same as the game, he laments that becoming the Fist King again is a distant dream when his current skills are those of a complete beginner. He turns to his father, his thoughts spiraling further. He can't even defeat the small fry monsters that roam the area, let alone powerful bosses or clearing entire dungeons. Clenching his fist, he acknowledges the reality of this world. Monsters, dungeons, skills, and magic all exist. Yet, faced with this truth, he feels utterly weak and questions if he can ever truly become strong again. His father's hand on his shoulder startles him from his thoughts. The man firmly asks what he is saying, cutting through his self-pity. The man smiles warmly, telling Kazuya that it's okay. He explains that the very act of accepting one's own weakness is the true first step toward getting stronger. His father's words strike a chord. Kazuya looks up, his eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears as his father assures him that from this point on, he's going to get much stronger. Overcome with emotion, Kazuya's hand tightens, gripping the fabric of his father's trousers. He whispers a quiet, heartfelt thank you. He stares forward, his expression hardening with newfound resolve. He makes a silent vow to himself. He will get stronger. Seeing his son's determination, his father presents him with a flyer for a training hall that is having its grand opening. He tells Kazuya that he should go there starting the next day. The following day, Kazuya arrives at the bustling training hall. He is struck with awe, exclaiming that the lively atmosphere feels just like a game world. A man at the entrance announces that rental weapons are free for anyone 15 and under, fueling Kazuya's excitement. He observes the other trainees, including a swordsman practicing his form and beginners striking a wooden log. Kazuya contemplates his own skill sheet, thinking how a typical swordsman would normally only be able to acquire sword-related skills. Gripping a rented wooden bat, he reflects on his own unique situation. His skill sheet already includes gun-type skills, a combination that he believes should be impossible to possess alongside other abilities. This leads him to a critical realization. While job classifications exist in this world, there are no rigid, game-like restrictions on acquiring skills. With this understanding, he decides which skill he must learn as quickly as possible. He reasons that by increasing his proficiency with maces and healing magic, he can gain a physical ability boost. Visualizing powerful healers and warriors, he becomes convinced that he can learn these skills. 8 hours pass. The training area is now littered with the splintered remains of wooden logs. Kazuya, exhausted and drenched in sweat, relentlessly continues his practice, chanting heal with each swing of his bat. His hands are scraped and bleeding from the effort. He pauses, looking at his injured palm, and mutters heal, but nothing happens. He pants, realizing with frustration that simply praying for it isn't enough. Suddenly, a soft light emanates from his hands. He stares in wide-eyed astonishment as he realizes the bleeding has stopped. The wound is closing on its own. He stared at his hand, watching as the torn skin mended itself. He could use heal, but the magic was limited. It wouldn't heal him any further than this. He deduced that he must have learned the skill during his relentless practice. For 8 hours he had swung the mace, feeling as though he'd pushed past his normal stamina limits. He must have run out of mana. A week later, he was back at the training hall, outlining his next objective to an observer, acquiring a physical ability boost. The man cautioned him against overexertion, but Kazuya knew his limited mana capacity remained a significant hurdle. His obsessive training had not gone unnoticed. The other regulars at the hall watched him, remarking that the kid was back again. They noted his daily routine of striking the log for over 8 hours, staying until the very last minute. One of them commented that it was like he was possessed by something. Their observations were not far from the truth. A dark intensity burned within him as he pushed himself to the brink, driven by a singular purpose that had solidified into a certainty over the past week. This certainty was a profound realization. The knowledge he had gained from the game was applicable here. This new world was structured by inheriting the game's settings, at least to some extent. With this understanding, his path became clear. His next goal was to raise his mace proficiency to level 10. He knew that achieving this would unlock the physical ability boost, granting him the power to swing a mace at full strength for an entire hour. As he focused, he was unaware of a familiar pair of eyes watching him. Tanya watched him intently, her attention broken by the arrival of another girl carrying a practice sword. Karen wondered if the newcomer was there to train. Kazuya, seeing them, had a fleeting, cynical thought about his own father who only played games, then mused to himself that he was tired of just smashing things and should try making a sculpture instead. As she watched, the young man with the slick-back hair approached her, his gaze also on Kazuya. He remarked on the unusual choice of a mace, calling it an interesting choice. Karen, a faint blush on her cheeks, could only agree, calling Kazuya a weird kid. He elaborated, acknowledging that while Kazuya appeared to be practicing hard, his technique also made it seem like he was just playing around. From their perspective, his relentless, repetitive swings lacked formal structure. He watched the boy, a slight smile on his face, recognizing the look of someone utterly dedicated to their task. A week later, that same dedication was still on display. Kazuya swung his mace with frantic energy, while Tanya observed from a distance. She noted his singular focus, believing he would grow stronger because he didn't care what others thought, and silently critiqued his form, thinking he should try swinging without tensing his body. But his training had evolved beyond simple swings. He was now hunched over a workbench, meticulously carving a piece of wood, his face a mask of fierce concentration. His intense effort, however, proved too much. With a sharp crack, the nearly finished piece shattered in his hands, and he cried out in frustration. He collapsed in despair amidst a pile of failures. After a week of trying, he hadn't completed a single one, and he began to doubt if his mace proficiency was increasing at all. From afar, Tanya saw that he was back at it, but she seemed to be facing her own struggles, admitting she couldn't use her power either. Refusing to give up, he resolved to change his practice method. He lamented the inability to check his status, which would make everything so much easier. As he contemplated his next move, his eyes suddenly fell upon the girl from the other day. The shock of seeing her made his grip falter, and a heavy log he was balancing began to topple. He lunged forward in a panic, his voice cracking as he desperately shouted for her to watch out. His shout cut through her thoughts. She looked up, her expression shifting from contemplation to confusion as she tried to understand the sudden commotion. Her confusion turned to terror as she saw the massive log plummeting directly towards her, and a scream tore from her throat. As the massive log plummeted towards her, Kazuya could only scream in terror, his warning a desperate, garbled cry for her to get out of the way. His shout was instantly drowned out by a deafening explosion of wood. The log didn't just land, it utterly disintegrated, sending sharp fragments flying in every direction. He stared, wide-eyed and speechless, at the cloud of debris where the girl had been just a moment before, unable to comprehend what had just happened. What he had failed to see was the girl's impossibly swift reaction. With a single, powerful kick, she had met the falling log head-on, obliterating it completely. She landed on her knees amidst the splinters, her own expression a mirror of his shock as she looked down at the result of her own strength. As the dust settled, Kazuya looked from the kneeling girl to the mace in his hand. A sudden realization struck him. The power he felt, the range of the impact, it was unmistakable. He had unlocked Bash, a skill only available at mace proficiency level 5. He grinned, a wave of relief and excitement washing over him. His bizarre carving training hadn't been a waste after all. His proficiency had definitely increased. Snapping back to the present, he turned to the girl, still on the floor with a slightly flustered charm, and asked if the pretty lady was all right, oblivious to another trainee nearby who simply regarded him as a weirdo. At the training grounds, a girl with light-toned hair in pigtails approaches Kazuya. She introduces herself as Tanya, explaining that she will be a third year at the same middle school he'll be attending. Offering her help as a senior, she extends a friendly welcome. A flustered Kazuya can only manage a quiet thank you. She continues, admitting with a smile that she has been wanting to talk to him for a while. Kazuya looks up, completely surprised, and asks why she would want to speak with him. Karen explains that it's because she's seen him training every day, striking a log with a club for over 8 hours without fail, making him a local celebrity. She points out that he can already use the Bash skill, something that takes 3 years to learn in school, calling it proof of his hard work. Kazuya, looking down, seems to quietly accept her praise. He then asks her if she knows of any other places besides the training grounds where he could swing a mace with all his might, adding that it would need to be free, if possible. Karen looks thoughtful, remarking that she also needs to step up her own game. Kazuya considers the situation, realizing that his skill grows stronger the less money he has, making a free training method essential. Nearby, the mustached observer from the hall comments that while rental equipment is cheap, the costs eventually add up. In response to his predicament, Karen offers a bold suggestion, he should try slaying monsters. The idea conjures an image of heavily armored warriors clashing with monstrous beasts. She elaborates, stating that since he can use bash, he would be perfectly safe taking down weaker creatures. Pulling out her phone, she shows him the Shizuoka Prefecture slime habitat list, pointing to a slime nest in a forest in the next town. Kazuya's eyes widen, his expression one of intense, sudden focus. He marvels at the idea, recalling how he used to hunt monsters in games to level up and earn gold, and now he can do it in reality. Karen adds a word of caution, warning him that going too deep into the forest could lead him to encounter horned rabbits. She also advises him to go with a parent or guardian. Following her advice, Kazuya ventures into the forest where several small, gelatinous slimes squirm on the ground. He swings his club with tremendous force, smashing down on one of the creatures. The impact is explosive, splattering the slime's body and sending its small, spherical core flying. His assault continues relentlessly. With a wide, exhilarated grin, Kazuya brings his club around in another powerful arc, striking a second slime and shouting with pure joy that this is awesome. He realized the full potential of his new path. Not only could he gain real combat experience and level up his skills, but he could even earn money. It was, he thought with a grimace of intense focus, 3 birds with 1 stone. The mustached man from the training hall seemed to question his resolve, but Kazuya was already lost in his calculations. His ambition quickly bore fruit. Holding up a bag heavy with slime cores, he noted with satisfaction that the 100% drop rate was quite nice. Deciding this was enough for a preliminary scouting trip, he resolved to head home for now. 2 hours later, after a brief rest, he began his trek out of the forest. As he walked, he made a mental note that for future expeditions, he would need to acquire a bigger, sturdier bag. His thoughts were interrupted by a rustling in the undergrowth. A creature emerged, a horned rabbit. A wave of dread washed over him as he realized his mistake. He had ventured a little too deep into the woods. The rabbit charged. Reacting on instinct, Kazuya swung his bat in a wide arc to intercept it, but his attack met only air. The creature was impossibly fast, ducking under the swing with ease as the bat slammed uselessly into the ground. He processed the situation with dawning horror. The rabbit's speed was on a completely different level from the slime's. It was unreal. A standard vertical swing would be too hard to land. Clenching his grip, he decided he would have to use a different technique. With a sharp thrust, he jabbed the bat forward. It hit, but the impact was shallow. The rabbit was barely fazed by the weak blow. The failed attack left him off balance, his bat knocked aside. The creature was already turning, coming at him again. Panic flared in his chest. From this stance, he couldn't possibly counter in time. He wasn't going to make it. A searing pain erupted in his shoulder as the rabbit's horn tore through flesh and muscle. The force of the impact sent him stumbling back, blood spraying from the wound. In that moment of agony, one thought burned through his mind. This wasn't a game. He desperately commands his body to heal, but the gruesome wound in his shoulder only continues to bleed. The agonizing realization crashes down upon him. This is reality. As the horned rabbit glares, he understands with chilling certainty that he is dead if he cannot land a clean hit. The creature's attack speed, he notes, is insane for a low-level monster. Bracing himself, he grips his makeshift club, preparing to face the monster's charge head-on. His focus narrows, his eye reflecting the approaching beast. He knows he must wait, drawing it in as close as possible to time his single, desperate counterattack. The rabbit lunges, its horn aimed true. A raw scream of agony rips from Kazuya's throat as the movement jars his impaled shoulder. Fueled by pure desperation, he ignores the pain and brings the heavy club down with a ferocious, two-handed slam, roaring with the effort. The weapon connects with a sickening crunch, striking the horned rabbit squarely on its head. The creature collapses. Kazuya stands over it, panting for breath, his body trembling. He stares down at the fallen monster, the reality of his victory slowly sinking in. He did it. He realizes with a shudder that if he had mistimed his swing by even a fraction of a second, he would have been fatally pierced through the chest. The chilling thought solidifies his new resolve. Sitting beside the corpse, he touches its still warm fur, a final confirmation that this world is not a game. He concludes that he must change his entire mindset. His thoughts then turn to Karen Tanya, recalling her mentioning that monster materials could be cashed in at the ward office. A new plan forms. He will take the rabbit with him. He discovered that fighting monsters was far more enjoyable than the training ground. For about a week, he hunted relentlessly in the slime nest from morning until night, occasionally taking down rabbits as well. After cashing in his drops at the ward office's monster subjugation division, he was thrilled to have earned nearly 100,000 yen in just 1 week. With his new funds, he set his sights on his next purchase, a skill sheet, a special item that would allow him to check his acquired skills at home. To afford it, he hunted for another full week. Returning to the counter, he was greeted by Sato-san, who thanked him for his hard work. The female clerk added that the office is always grateful for his subjugation efforts. She then presented him with the skill sheet he had saved up for, explaining that all he needed to do was place a single drop of blood inside the frame to activate it. Kazuya thanked her profusely, but the clerk waved it off with a smile. She insisted that they were the ones who should be thanking him for all the items he had brought in over the past 2 weeks, and confirmed the sheet would display all his current skills. She elaborated that he had become quite the celebrity around the office, as they had never had anyone bring in over 20 kilograms of slime cores every single day. In response, Kazuya could only manage a slightly embarrassed laugh. Just then, a familiar voice called out his name in disbelief. Kazuya turned to find his father, mother, and younger brother standing there, staring at him. His father asked, "Is that really you, Kazuya?" Stunned, Kazuya stared back, a fresh bandage on his cheek. He stammered, "Dad? Mom," as his father, seeing him at the monster subjugation counter, demanded to know what in the world he was doing there. From a high vantage point, Kazuya's father looks down at him, his mother standing silently beside them. His father's voice is firm as he makes a simple, direct demand. "Kazuya, tell me the truth." He explains that a rumor has been circulating at the ward office about a young boy who brings in 20 kilograms of slime cores every single day. Driven by curiosity, he admits he took a peek at the counter himself. His memory flashes to the scene. The ward clerk asking Kazuya where he got so many cores, and Kazuya's bold claim that he defeated all the slimes himself. Snapping back to the present, the father grabs Kazuya, his expression concerned, asking if he's having money problems. Kazuya quickly denies it. Kazuya recoils slightly as his father's face contorts with furious disbelief. He roars at his son, demanding he stop lying, insisting that there is no possible way he could have accomplished such a feat with his known abilities. The confrontation ends unresolved. As Kazuya walks away from the house, his brother watches from the doorway, calling out for him to wait. He remarks that if Kazuya isn't going to be believed, then so be it, but a somber thought crosses his mind. In the end, nothing has truly changed. He continues on his way, reflecting that his father is still the same. Back in his room, Kazuya sits at his desk and begins working on his computer, a sense of resignation settling over him. He reflects on his extraordinary journey, being reborn in another world, even returning from death itself. Despite all of it, a heavy question hangs in his mind. Is he himself any different? His focus shifts to the document on his screen as a confirmation appears. Skill appraisal complete. He thinks to himself that it's just as he expected. With the skill sheet he purchased now ready, and his uniform hanging nearby, he is prepared for the entrance ceremony the next day. The skill sheet details his incredible progress. He has maxed out stamina recovery, physical ability, bash, and magic power recovery at level 10. His mace proficiency is also at a staggering level 10, while heal is at level 3, sword proficiency at level 2, and gun proficiency at level 1. He notes with satisfaction that it didn't take him the standard 3 years just to acquire a single skill. He considers the established norm. Middle school students dedicate 3 years of training and classwork just to acquire a single skill. Yet, he has discovered that simply raising one's weapon proficiency is a direct path to gaining skills. He wonders how no one else has figured this out, and also observes that there don't seem to be any jobs. A look of grim confirmation crosses his face. This discovery solidifies a crucial understanding for him. He reflects on his past, realizing that everything he learned in the game world, all the power he once wielded, can be used here. This is his chance to prove his true capabilities. In this new world, he sees a clear path to becoming the ultimate fist king he always dreamed of being. Recalling the day of the entrance ceremony, he vows to get stronger little by little. His hand clenches into a fist, a physical sign of his renewed determination as he looks over the skills he has already acquired. On the day of the first Swordsman Middle School entrance ceremony, his mother excitedly takes pictures of the family. Kazuya, dressed in his new uniform, playfully asks what she'll do with them all. Despite the moment, a quiet sigh reveals the lingering tension from the previous day. He looks up at the main building, struck by the sheer size of the school. His mother approaches, gently reminding him that the ceremony is about to start. She adds that his father is just worried about him after the recent conflict. Kazuya quietly acknowledges her words, his gaze lowered. A voice rings out, congratulating the new students. Kazuya is surprised to see the speaker is Tanya, introducing herself as the student council president. He recalls her from the training grounds, noting the completely different, more formal air she has now. She warns the students that they will face many trials over the next 3 years. She continues, explaining that they will grow by learning from one another, and that through it all, they must help each other. Her words conjure images of adventurers studying and fighting together. She promises that by never giving up and by continuing to believe in themselves, they will all become strong and dependable adventurers. With a warm, hopeful expression, she concludes her speech, stating that her prayer is for the day they all become adventurers who save the world, beloved by all. She concludes her welcoming address with a gentle smile, bowing slightly. In the audience, Kazuya claps, impressed by Tanya's composure, while other students murmur in admiration. Another man then takes the podium, his expression stern. He introduces himself as Todoroki, the principal of First Swordsman Middle School, and immediately poses a question to the assembly. Are they aware of the school's skill appraisal system? He continues, explaining that the school employs a full-time, dedicated skill appraiser to help students as they acquire abilities over their 3 years. The words skill appraisal strike Kazuya with force, and he stares in wide-eyed shock. Principal Todoroki introduces the man beside him as Mr. Ujihara, the resident appraiser, who offers a polite greeting. The principal then announces a special appraisal session, challenging any new student who believes they already possess a skill to come to the stage. In the crowd, some students recognize this as the principal's annual freshman hazing. In response to the challenge, Kazuya raises his hand, startling Karen, who sits beside him. The principal acknowledges him. Kazuya asks if he might borrow a weapon, and the intrigued principal readily agrees, permitting him to take one from the school's inventory. Moments later, Kazuya stands on the stage holding a short sword. He faces Mr. Ujihara directly, while Principal Todoroki watches from the side, arms crossed in anticipation. Ujihara questions his readiness, but Kazuya dismisses the concern, stating that this is a perfect chance to test the accuracy of his own skill sheet. As he declares his intent to begin, students in the audience realize the principal is simply trying to motivate them. He lunges. In an instant, Kazuya's form dissolves into a shadowy blur wreathed in dark energy, crossing the stage with impossible speed. Ujihara's composed demeanor shatters, his eyes wide with disbelief at the sudden, overwhelming display of power. The principal claps a hand on Kazuya's shoulder, laughing with delight. He praises the boy's youthful vigor and exceptional swing, then loudly proclaims that Kazuya will be a celebrity in the school by tomorrow. Kazuya himself looks utterly bewildered by the enthusiastic reaction. Suddenly, a strange sound cuts through the air, silencing the principal's laughter. "What was that?" he asks, startled. Mr. Ujihara, looking shaken, apologizes and remarks that it seems this year's freshmen are quite inexperienced after all. He stares in disbelief, identifying the skill as Bash, Level 2. The principal is incredulous that a boy who was an elementary schooler just days prior could possess such an ability. From the crowd, Kazuya watches the unfolding reaction with a steady, unreadable gaze, wondering if it's even possible for someone his age to use a skill. Before anyone can fully process the first display, he raises his hand toward the appraiser, declaring there's more where that came from. A gentle light envelopes Mr. Ujihara, who recognizes the spell instantly, a high-level heal. The principal, recovering from his shock, erupts in fury, yelling that Kazuya shouldn't mess with him and that kids should just listen to their teachers. His tirade is cut short as a sudden, concussive force erupts from Kazuya, sending both the principal and Mr. Ujihara flying backward with a cry of pain. As the dust settles, the principal steams with barely contained rage. Beside him, a stunned Mr. Ujihara questions just how many skills Kazuya possesses, recognizing the last display as some form of buff magic. He looks down upon the bewildered adults, a confident smirk playing on his lips. A single, piercing question hangs in his mind, a challenge to them and perhaps to himself. Who in the world are you? During the entrance ceremony, murmurs spread through the crowd about Kazuya's rare combination of heal and bash, and even buff magic. As he stands amidst the onlookers, a sharp-dressed man with long, light hair approaches him. He introduces himself as the resident appraiser, Mr. Ujihara, and requests that Kazuya Sato accompany him to another room for a moment. Kazuya, caught off guard, stares at the man's outstretched hand, wondering who he is. In a private room, Mr. Ujihara pours tea for Kazuya and his brother. He expresses his genuine astonishment, admitting he never imagined Kazuya would have already acquired 3 distinct skills. He is joined by Karen Tanya, whom he thanks for her assistance, noting that the principal is occupied with other parents. Karen graciously accepts the thanks, acknowledging the commotion Kazuya caused. Mr. Ujihara then prepares to explain the reason for the meeting. The conversation shifts as Kazuya's brother explains to their mother that the other parents are clamoring to speak with them. They are all curious about Kazuya's homeschooling and educational methods. His mother looks on, slightly overwhelmed. Karen's eyes widen in shock as Mr. Ujihara reveals a critical piece of information. He explains that he reviewed Kazuya's skill sheet and discovered his bash skill has reached level 10. Kazuya's brother interjects, confused, stating that Ujihara had previously said it was only level 2. The appraiser clarifies that the high level is likely tied to his weapon proficiency. He elaborates, showing a diagram that illustrates how skills are capped by the user's proficiency with the corresponding weapon. Since Kazuya's club proficiency is at level 10, he can utilize the bash skill at its maximum potential. In contrast, his sword proficiency is only level 5, which would limit bash to that level if he were wielding a sword. Kazuya murmurs in understanding, likening the mechanic to settings in a video game. Mr. Ujihara then pivots the conversation back to the topic the principal had mentioned, the option for skill users to choose whether or not to attend the academy. He states his intention to take advantage of that choice. His words are met with a sudden, intense shift in Kazuya's demeanor. With a hardened gaze, Kazuya makes a firm declaration. "I'm not coming to school." The declaration startles Mr. Ujihara, who calls out his name. Kazuya turns away, his fist clenched tightly at his side. He looks toward his brother and explains his resolve. He wants to get stronger and faster, to become powerful enough to defeat any monster by himself. In response to his declaration, Mr. Ujihara looks at him intently, offering a piece of advice. No one achieves strength entirely on their own. He elaborates on his point, explaining that attending school would allow Kazuya to meet all sorts of different people, which would help him grow even stronger. While acknowledging Kazuya's hard work and existing skills, Ujihara reminds him that he is still maturing. As Kazuya processes this, his mother steps in, suggesting they speak with the principal before all heading home. She tells her son to be careful on his way back. Nearby, Tanya calls out a farewell, expecting to see him at school. Kazuya can only offer a non-committal agreement. He turns and begins to walk away from the school grounds. His brother calls out to him, acknowledging the weight of the situation and confirming they will discuss it with their father once they get home. Before he can get far, Tanya catches up to him. She apologizes for the day's surprising events and asks if he'd like to walk home with her. After he seems to agree, she directly asks if he truly doesn't plan on attending school. He hesitates, admitting he isn't certain, but feels a strong desire to use his time to focus solely on getting stronger. He reassures her that he will discuss the final decision with his parents at home. His mind drifts to the reality of his current power level. He pictures himself struggling in the field, barely able to take down even a single horned rabbit. The thought of spending time in school classes feels like a delay he cannot afford. He reflects on the reactions of the teachers and everyone else at the academy, realizing just how desperate they are to acquire skills. He understands that for them, training 8 hours a day for a month straight is an impossible commitment. For him, however, it is not. The weight of his resolve settles on Tanya. Her expression is filled with concern as she echoes his thought, understanding that the path he is considering is one that most people simply cannot walk. She listened as Kazuya continued his explanation, his voice earnest. He pointed out that students spend 3 whole years at the academy just to learn a single skill. He acknowledged that his own path was incredibly difficult, but as his hand tightened into a fist, he asserted that it was a path others simply could not take. Taken aback, Tanya called his statement weird before quickly apologizing. Turning to leave, she gave him a cheerful wave, telling him she would see him at school as she headed home. Later, as Kazuya arrived home, his brother was waiting for him. He called out to Kazuya, asking for a moment of his time. Kazuya paused, agreeing to talk. Inside, his brother held up a document, Kazuya's skill sheet. He asked if the story Kazuya told him was true, confirming that he even knew Kazuya had bought the sheet with money earned from destroying slimes. With an intense gaze, Kazuya asked if his brother believed him now. His brother looked down, admitting that he honestly still couldn't comprehend how someone could acquire so many skills in such a short time. He stared at the sheet, his skepticism evident as he recalled Kazuya's claim of training 8 hours a day for a month by just hitting a log. He questioned if that was truly all it took. His brother then voiced his deeper concerns, pointing out how Kazuya had abruptly stopped playing games and started hunting slimes, acting like a completely different person. He confessed that after hearing Kazuya's explanation earlier, he was genuinely worried about him. Kazuya's expression hardened. He asked if his brother was accusing him of lying, or if he thought the skill sheet itself was a fake. His brother looked away, apologetic but firm. He admitted he still couldn't believe it, and that was precisely why he needed more than just words. Standing beside their mother, who watched with a neutral expression, Kazuya's brother made his demand. He needed to see Kazuya's skills with his own eyes. After a moment of tense silence, Kazuya's resolve solidified. He simply agreed. Fine. Soon after, a vehicle sped along a paved road, kicking up dust as it turned onto a rougher path. In the distance, a great mountain stood against the sky, marking their destination. Their vehicle pulled up to a guarded gatehouse marked Izu Kogen Field. A uniformed guard approached the driver's side, requesting to see their certificate. His father presented a card to the guard, who confirmed their identity before opening the gate. From the back seat, Kazuya's brother asked what the document was, and his father explained it was a graduation certificate from an adventure school. He continued, clarifying that when hunting monsters in a field like this, amateurs are not allowed to enter on their own. A party must include at least one member with this specific certificate to act as an escort. Kazuya listened, absorbing the new information. With their credentials verified, the gate began to slide open. His father acknowledged the rule, promising to be more careful as he drove the vehicle through the entrance. As they passed through, Kazuya, his father, and his brother all stared out the window in wide-eyed astonishment, exclaiming in unison at the sight before them. The car traveled down a dirt road into a vast, wild landscape. Enormous, snake-like creatures coiled around the branches of massive trees, overlooking the valley below. Kazuya, still gazing out the window, thought to himself how awesome the place was. After driving further into the field, the car came to a stop. His mother announced their arrival, telling Kazuya that she and his father were going to get their gear on. He stepped out onto the strange, cracked earth, a gear bag slung over his shoulder. Looking around at the alien terrain, he couldn't believe a facility like this even existed, finding it all incredible. His mother's voice cut through his awe, asking if he was ready. His attention was fixed on a screen displaying information about a local creature, the Oni-horned gull, and he realized that in a place like this, he could level up much faster. He turned to see his parents, now clad in heavy, futuristic combat armor, his father wielding a large rifle. His mother, holding a similar weapon, asked if he was sure he would be fine with just a simple sword. His father added that fighting with guns is the standard, questioning what Kazuya could possibly do with his blade. Kazuya, looking determined, simply stated, "So let's see." His expression hardened with resolve. Gripping the hilt of his sword, he declared his readiness to proceed, stating firmly, "Let's go." With that, he turned and led the way, his parents following closely behind as the trio ventured deeper into the hunting grounds. Deep within a dense forest, an armored man leads Kazuya along a path, issuing cautious instructions. He advises Kazuya that if he spots a monster, he must first hide, stay perfectly still, and silence his breathing. From the foliage, a voice calls out Kazuya's name. The armored man stops, turning back to Kazuya, who seems lost in thought. He asks if Kazuya is listening, trying to regain the boy's attention. Kazuya, however, is focused on something else entirely. He murmurs that he can faintly hear footsteps and sense a palpable killing intent. The armored man acknowledges that they have been followed for some time, questioning Kazuya about his skill as a monstrous wolf-like creature growls from the shadows. From the trees, a full pack of the creatures, werewolves, emerges, snarling as they surround the pair. The armored man notes that while he has fought them in school training exercises, these are clearly different. The wolves lunge with shocking speed. The armored man gasps at their velocity and, seeing Kazuya raise a hand, yells at him not to shoot, warning him that this is not like the mock battles at school. His focus unbroken, Kazuya internally states that his goal is to raise his sword proficiency. From a safe distance, other trainees watch the scene unfold, questioning why Kazuya isn't scared and remarking on the impossibility of the situation. A confident smirk spreads across his face as he activates a skill, Taunt. He beckons the creatures forward, challenging the mutts to come at him. He notes with interest that, until now, enemies had never attacked him on sight. The armored man watches the wolves, a grim realization dawning on him. These creatures are different. They are looking at them as prey. It is a situation of kill or be killed. Kazuya accepts the reality of his circumstances. This is no longer a game or a drill. It is a true battle for their very lives. The distant observers can only watch in confusion. Just as he steels himself for the wolf pack, the ground before him erupts. A massive carnivorous plant monster with a gaping, tooth-filled maw bursts forth. Kazuya instantly identifies the new threat, Mandragoras. He stares, frozen, as the Mandragora's maw lunges forward with a deafening roar. From behind, the armored man screams a desperate warning for Kazuya to run. The creature's cry summons allies. Smaller plant monsters erupt from the ground, adding to the chaos of the werewolf pack. Seeing their numbers swell, the armored man insists they have to get away immediately. Before they can retreat, two figures blur past with enhanced speed, a skill identified as a physical power boost. The armored man watches, stunned by their velocity, as Tanya and the slicked-hair man join the fight. Seizing the opening, Kazuya lunges and strikes down one of the smaller plant creatures. He presses the advantage, driving his weapon directly into the main body of the giant Mandragora. The massive plant monster shudders and collapses. The armored man turns to Kazuya, his expression one of pure astonishment, and asks if he already knew how to defeat it. Kazuya's mind races, processing the battle as if it were the game he once knew. He understood the best way to win was to strike before they fully emerged, and that 2 hits with a bash skill would be enough. As he reflects, Tanya fells a werewolf with a powerful kick, leaving the armored man utterly baffled by Kazuya's foreknowledge. The brief victory is cut short by a deep growl. A new threat emerges, a massive grizzly bear monster. The armored man is aghast, wondering what a monster of such power is doing so close to the forest's edge. The grizzly lunges without warning, swiping its claws at Karen and the slicked-hair man. Seeing the immediate peril, the armored man cries out that they are both in danger. Meanwhile, Kazuya sits on the ground, his energy seemingly spent. The grizzly notices his vulnerable state and turns its massive form toward him. As it looms over the boy, a small orb of light pops into existence before him. It is his taunt skill. The grizzly, instantly enraged, abandons its other targets and viciously attacks Kazuya. The armored man can only watch in horror, screaming Kazuya's name as the beast's claws and teeth tear into him. The grizzly, which had been mauling him, suddenly rears back, letting out a final, agonized roar as a decisive blow lands, erupting blood from its chest. The massive beast collapses, defeated. In the background, Karen and the armored man stand guard, their intervention having been successful. On the ground, Kazuya clutches the monster's glowing core, wincing in pain. He thinks to himself that he let his guard down, shocked that such a powerful creature appeared so far from its usual territory. He pushes himself to his feet, his clothes and face stained with blood, but a wide, triumphant grin spreads across his face. He looks back at his relieved companions and asks with a laugh how he did, then wonders aloud if he has finally gotten stronger. His question is met with stunned silence. His question is answered not with words, but with a sudden, desperate action. The armored man rushes forward and pulls him into a crushing hug, crying out with raw, unrestrained emotion. Caught completely off guard, Kazuya is bewildered. The display is so overwhelming that he briefly wonders if it's his mother, before looking up and questioning if it could be his father. The man's face, now visible without his helmet, is streaked with tears of profound relief. He looks at Kazuya, his voice thick with emotion, and tells him how glad he is that he's safe. Kazuya can only stare back, stunned into silence by the revelation. Holding the boy tightly amidst the desolate landscape, he trembles with relief. In a quiet, choked voice, he adds that Kazuya has gotten so strong. At the school, a large assembly of students concludes an event. A notice identifies Tanya of class 3 to 5, thanking her for her guidance, indicating her leadership role among the student body. Following the assembly, Karen observes a fellow student with dark, ponytailed hair practicing her swordsmanship. She turns to Mr. Ujihara and asks for his assessment. He confirms that the trainee's sword proficiency is rising steadily, but notes that she has yet to acquire any formal skills. Meanwhile, in a dense forest, Kazuya trails behind the heavily armored man. The guide issues a critical instruction. Upon spotting a monster, Kazuya is to immediately hide, remain perfectly still, and silence his breathing. The armored man pauses, calling out Kazuya's name to get his attention. He asks if the boy is listening, but Kazuya's focus seems to be fixed on something just out of view. Back at the school, another student praises Karen, the president, for her rapidly improving proficiency. Despite the compliment, Karen's expression becomes somber as she reflects on her own lack of acquired skills. Nearby, a group of students begins to gossip about a new student. The rumors about the new student spread. One boy mentions that he's already learned a skill and is self-taught. Another adds with excitement that he heard the student even took down a grizzly bear. As Karen walks with the sword trainee, her friend comments on the unfairness of it all, remarking that it must be all about talent since the new student hasn't even been coming to school. The friend's complaints continue, suggesting someone with that much talent wouldn't even need to attend school. The remark strikes a nerve. Karen's expression hardens as she sharply retorts that Kazuya-kun works hard, harder than anyone else there. She insists they shouldn't just write him off based on talent alone. Stunned by her fierce defense, her friends quickly apologize. Her passionate outburst does not go unnoticed. Other students who overheard the exchange realize the rumors must be true and begin to cheer, shouting their support for their president. At that very moment, in an office, Kazuya, now dressed in a formal suit, feels a strange sensation, as if someone just called his name. Principal Todoroki asks what's wrong, while Mr. Ujihara chuckles that Kazuya is now a celebrity. Elsewhere, a flustered Karen wonders about the weird rumors spreading about her and Kazuya. He sat in the office as Principal Todoroki addressed the room, explaining that they wish to discuss Kazuya's future once more. With input from Mr. Ujihara, the school had now formalized its official policy. In response, Kazuya's father apologized for how long the decision took, explaining that he and his wife had talked it over. The principal then leaned forward, confirming what they had heard, that it was indeed Kazuya who had dealt with the grizzly bear. He looked at his son, his expression softening, and announced their final decision. They would let Kazuya do as he wishes. The boy's eyes widened in surprise at the declaration. His father continued, confessing that he had been skeptical until he witnessed his son's combat prowess firsthand. He acknowledged that Kazuya was already operating at a level far beyond their influence. He recalled the sight of Kazuya battling the grizzly, admitting that seeing his son so passionate for the first time brought him a sense of foolish parental pride. Visibly moved, Kazuya could only utter his father's name, as the principal noted that this decision made matters much simpler. With that, a document was presented, a special treatment student curriculum course proposal compiled by the school council. It outlined a new plan where Kazuya's class attendance would be voluntary, and he would receive a letter of recommendation to the Adventurers Guild. The terms left Kazuya and his family stunned. His brother immediately objected, exclaiming that Kazuya was only 12 and had just left elementary school. While Kazuya's father acknowledged his surprise, he affirmed their belief that this was the best path for Kazuya to pursue as an adventurer. The principal concurred, stating frankly that no middle school in Japan could accommodate Kazuya's unique needs. He asserted that this special curriculum was the best way to nurture the boy's talent, though Kazuya himself was still fixated on the mention of the Adventurers Guild. He looked toward the adults and asked if this path would allow him to become even stronger. After a moment, his father sighed in resignation and gave his consent. With a determined clench of his fist, Kazuya accepted the offer. Overcome with gratitude, Kazuya thanked him profusely. His father simply smiled, giving his son his blessing to do as he wished. He sits with his family, finalizing the conditions of his new life. His father sets a firm rule. Kazuya must be home for dinner every single night. With the terms settled for the following Sunday, Kazuya gives his solemn promise. On the appointed day, Kazuya arrives at the Shizuoka Adventurers Guild. He stares in wide-eyed wonder at the bustling hall, filled with seasoned warriors clad in various types of armor, a sight far more real and imposing than any game he had ever played. He steps through the entrance, recalling how in his past life, he only ever visited such places to mindlessly accept quests. The way to the real world's equivalent feels different. While observing the variety of gear worn by the adventurers, a guild receptionist with a kind face approaches him. Mistaking him for a lost child, she asks if he needs help, but Kazuya quickly clarifies that he isn't looking for armor. He presents a formal document to her, introducing himself as Kenzuya Sato and explaining that he has a letter of recommendation from his school to become an adventurer. The receptionist is so surprised that she fumbles with the letter. Apologizing, she calls out for the guildmaster, announcing that Kenzuya is her guest. Her words draw the attention of nearby adventurers, who stare in disbelief that a mere boy could be an adventurer. In response to her call, a man with long hair and a distinctive eye patch steps forward. He introduces himself as Jinai, the guildmaster, and confirms Kenzuya's identity, revealing that the school principal had already told him about the boy. Jinai remarks that he heard Kenzuya has already acquired 3 skills. He leads Kenzuya to a private table to talk. Kenzuya states his purpose directly. He came to the guild to get stronger and wishes to be allowed to take on quests. Jinai listens, then explains the current situation. The guild is facing a surge in monster incidents, creating more work than they can handle. He admits that he is always happy to have more talented people join their ranks. However, his expression hardens. He states with conviction that putting a child with a bright future in harm's way is something that adventurers must never do, casting serious doubt on Kenzuya's immediate future with the guild. He chuckles, remarking that Kenzuya has the air of a little old man, though he quickly dismisses it as a joke. Kenzuya internally bristles at being called a child. The guildmaster's light-hearted demeanor then vanishes as he points out an injury on the boy's ribs. His gaze sharpens as he correctly deduces the injury came from the grizzly. He notes to himself that while no one else had noticed, this boy did. In the background, the receptionist sighs in exasperation at the guildmaster's antics. The guildmaster's tone becomes deadly serious. He tells Kenzuya that this is not a game. He stresses the grim reality of their profession. When you die, you die. It is therefore essential to do everything possible to lower the risks before accepting any challenge. He continues, explaining that a true adventurer's duty is to protect not only themselves, but their comrades as well. Shifting back from his lecture, he concedes that there is no point in him just preaching. He tells Kenzuya directly that he is lacking in this crucial area of self-preservation and teamwork. To address this deficiency, the guildmaster declares his decision. He is going to have Kenzuya take a test. Kenzuya questions the proposal. The guildmaster lays out the terms. If Kenzuya can complete 1 quest without incident, he will be officially registered. The boy eagerly accepts, but the guildmaster adds a condition. He will be assigned a support partner. Kenzuya is visibly surprised, stating that he works alone. Ignoring the protest, Jinai introduces Kenzuya to the guild's dismantling specialist, a young woman named Oda Mao. She glares at Kenzuya, telling the brat not to get cocky. Internally, Kenzuya notes her rudeness, while Oda laments being saddled with another difficult assignment. With the partner assigned, the guildmaster reveals the quest, a Cockatrice subjugation. The receptionist expresses her concern over the mission's high danger level. Oda clarifies she is only there for the dismantling. Kenzuya, however, stares at the quest details with a wide, eager grin, looking more than ready for the challenge. At the Adventurers Guild, Guildmaster Jinai begins the briefing for the next hunt. He explains that the target is a cockatrice, a creature that has the body of a rooster from its head to its feet. He continues, pointing out the creature's most unusual feature. Its tail is that of a snake. Holding up a sketch of the beast, Jinai emphasizes that they are extremely ferocious and stand about 2 to 3 meters tall. The test, he declares to the assembled party, is passed upon the subjugation of a single specimen. Sometime later, at the edge of the hunting grounds, Kenzuya sits and takes a final breath to center himself, declaring that he is ready. Nearby, Oda Mao watches from beside a cart and wishes him good luck. She calls out to him, and he turns to offer his thanks for her words. His expression hardens with resolve. Oda Mao warns him that they are approaching Cockatrice territory, giving him one last chance to turn back. Her tone shifts to one of annoyance, asking if Kenzuya has a death wish, and telling him this is no place for a kid to be playing. Kenzuya retorts that since she isn't fighting, she should be the one to keep quiet. As Oda reacts in disbelief, Guildmaster Jinai steps in, calling Kenzuya a brat and telling him to be quiet and just focus on his assigned task of carving up the monsters. Heeding the command, Kenzuya proceeds alone, taking cover behind a rock formation. He peers out and finds his target, but realizes with alarm that he has been spotted. His situation is worse than he anticipated. It is not a single cockatrice, but an entire flock. As the creatures turn towards him, Kenzuya springs into action, leaping atop the rocks with a shout. Watching for distance, Oda Mao realizes his strategy. The plan is to lure one of them away from the group. She watches from a high cliff as Kenzuya, now on the ground below, faces the flock of cockatrices. His eyes are wide with intense focus, his weapon held ready as he prepares to spring his trap. He darts forward, easily evading the lunge of one monster, dismissing its speed as too slow. Without breaking stride, he pivots towards another, shouting for the next challenger. His movement culminates in a powerful, sweeping strike that connects solidly with his second cockatrice, sending a spray of feathers and dust into the air upon impact. From her vantage point, Oda Mao watches in utter disbelief. She mutters aloud, stunned that he took down 2 of them in an instant, and questions just what kind of person he truly is. Back in the fray, Kenzuya faces another of the beasts, a look of sheer enjoyment on his face that seems to confuse the monster. His mind, however, is cold and analytical, identifying the cockatrice's weak point, its heart, which is heavily protected by powerful chest muscles. He thrusts his weapon, but the attack is blocked by the creature's tough hide. He internally notes that the difficulty of the fight depends entirely on whether one can get an attack through that formidable defense. Undeterred, his expression hardens with resolve. If there's no opening to exploit, he decides, then he will simply force one into existence. To that end, he quickly reaches into a pouch at his hip and withdraws a small, sharp object, readying it in his hand. With the tool reinforcing his strike, he lunges again, this time with devastating effect. Oda Mao's eyes widen as she processes what she's seeing. His knowledge, his technique. She realizes it's all on par with, or perhaps even better than, a high-rank adventurer. Her assessment is interrupted by a voice from her communicator, asking if she needs to provide support for the 12-year-old. Gazing at the battlefield, she firmly rejects the offer. "No way. You go," she replies, claiming to be tied up with another matter as she continues to watch Kazuya's unbelievable performance. She found herself in the guildmaster's office, her report on the table between them. Guildmaster Jinai reviewed the details with a confident smile, remarking that based on what he'd heard, the boy was quite the prodigy. He expressed a strong desire to have someone like Kazuya join their guild. He elaborated, pointing to a newspaper clipping that credited Kazuya with other feats. The article noted the creatures were defeated by a sword, and the materials harvested were of extremely high quality. Jinai explained that while Kazuya's power was undeniable, teamwork is essential in a guild, and so he needed Oda to assess that aspect of the boy. And so, she returned to the field, standing before the carnage Kazuya had wrought. Her mission was clear, to determine if he was the kind of person suitable for the guild. Her thoughts were interrupted by Kazuya's cheerful voice from across the clearing. He called out, asking her to begin carving up one of the creatures while he went off to hunt for more, leaving her momentarily speechless. She stared down at the slain monster, her mind reeling. He had engaged in close-quarters combat without even using a gun. She realized with a grim certainty that 100 lives wouldn't be enough against such skill. The question hung in her mind. Could anyone possibly keep up with him? She let out a quiet sigh, deciding she wasn't in a position to judge. For now, she would simply report her findings back to the guildmaster. But as she resolved to do so, a sudden movement caught her eye. The serpentine tail of a supposedly dead cockatrice lunged towards her, its fanged maw wide open. The scene widened, revealing a horrifying truth. It wasn't just one. All around Kazuya, the severed tails of the cockatrices were writhing with independent life. A jolt of panic shot through her. Her gun was back on the truck. A crucial fact about the monster surfaced in her mind. The tail could move on its own, even after the main body is dead. As the disembodied tail hissed menacingly before her, she fought to regain her composure. "Calm down," she told herself, "the body's dead. Just think of it as exterminating a snake." She lets out a strained grunt as the dismembered serpentine tail lunges toward her face, its fangs bared. Her eyes widen in alarm as she grits her teeth, shouting for the creature to get back. Before the tail can strike, a figure blurs past. Kazuya slams his fist into the ground, unleashing a shockwave that obliterates the attacking monster parts in a violent explosion of force, leaving Oda Mao staring in stunned silence. He rises, his hands still crackling with energy, and lets out a triumphant yell. He realizes the shockwave was a new ability he has just acquired, Break Attack. His excitement vanishes as he turns to Oda Mao with an apologetic expression, admitting he completely forgot about the tails. He then quickly asks if she is hurt. She stammers, flustered, insisting it was nothing and that she could have handled it herself. Internally, however, she grapples with the undeniable fact that he just saved her life. He, however, is completely oblivious to her inner turmoil. He beams with excitement, declaring that with his new break attack, he can now defeat enemies in large groups. He then announces he's going to hunt more cockatrices and will bring back plenty for her to carve up. With a whoop of joy, he sprints off, leaving Oda Mao to stare after him, muttering to herself that his power is simply impossible. At the dismantling area, Oda Mao stands over the carcass of a defeated cockatrice. With a swift, precise motion, she brings a tool down onto its body, beginning the process of breaking it down. Her focus is absolute. With a sharp glint in her eye, she drives her fist directly into the creature's flesh, the force of the blow demonstrating her raw power and expertise. As she works with incredible speed, Kazuya watches from short distance. The results of her labor are already being sorted into large bins, one for feathers and another for bones. In an astonishingly short time, she finishes her work. Holding up one of her tools, Oda Mao announces that the dismantling of all 35 cockatrices is more or less complete, presenting the neatly separated meat. Both Kazuya and the guild master look on, amazed at her efficiency. She turns to Kazuya, acknowledging that he is pretty amazing himself for killing all those monsters without armor. Kazuya, however, is lost in self-critique, realizing he still has a long way to go. He suggests hunting more, but Oda dismisses the idea, pointing to his broken sword and stating they will return to the guild. He protests, insisting he can still fight. He declares that he'll pull through with guts alone, but she immediately counters. She knew he was out of mana after using so much, and bluntly reminds him that he now has no weapon and no energy left. Her tone becomes serious. She warns him to treasure his life more, especially if he intends to join the guild. Otherwise, she cautions, he will only put himself and his future comrades in danger. Kazuya's gaze hardens. He tells her that all that matters to him is getting stronger. He doesn't care about anything else. Seeing his intense declaration, she sighs, remarking that he must be going through a cringy phase before confirming that they are heading back. Back at the guild, Guildmaster Jinai is overjoyed. He shouts that they have 35 cockatrices, all in good condition, and orders them to be put up for auction immediately. Oda, standing beside Kazuya, looks annoyed by the commotion. The Guildmaster turns to a stunned Kazuya, his eye patch crinkling with a wide grin. He declares that Kazuya has passed the test. He will be accepted as a rank 2 adventurer, officially welcoming him to their guild. Kazuya can only stare in disbelief. He is met with a wave of commotion as the Guildmaster announces his arrival. The other adventurers buzz with excitement and curiosity about the new kid, with one exclaiming in amazement. As the crowd reacts, Oda Mao turns away with a look of annoyance. She mutters that she dislikes troublesome situations like this, and, since it no longer concerns her, she is leaving. Kazuya watches her depart. The Guildmaster also watches her go, reflecting that her presence was difficult to watch. He notes that, honestly, she reminded him of a certain person from the past. His thoughts are interrupted as he is suddenly surrounded by fellow adventurers. One man with a headband approaches, asking in awe if Kazuya really defeated all those monsters by himself, declaring him a promising rookie. Kazuya, however, is preoccupied with the realization that he never got to thank Oda-san. The man with the headband eagerly asks Kazuya to join his party. When Kazuya seems unfamiliar with the term, the man explains it's a group for taking on quests together. He boasts that his party members are all rank 2 and are among the best in the guild for both kills and money earned. He continues his pitch, claiming they're a much better team than Oda Mao, who he dismisses as a woman who can't even fight, and that they're even faster at dismantling than she is. Another member of his party smirks, adding that the decision is Kazuya's to make. The entire exchange feels familiar to Kazuya. The situation triggers a memory. He recalls that in his old game, as his level increased, his relationships with other players grew more complicated. This sort of recruitment attempt happened constantly. He remembers being approached by many annoying players, receiving a flood of messages with offers and propositions. He won't spend an entire day just responding to all the nonsense. Returning to the present, the persistent adventurer asks if he can see Kazuya's knife. Believing he has convinced the boy, he smiles, saying he knew it. Kazuya simply replies, sure, as he presents the small blade. In a flash of movement, Kazuya lunges forward, pressing the edge of the knife against the adventurer's throat. The man's confident smile vanishes, replaced by shock and terror as Kazuya glares at him with cold intensity. He holds the blade steady against the adventurer's throat, his voice low and menacing. The man, sweating and wide-eyed, calls him crazy. Kazuya warns him not to look down on him, just because he's a kid. To prove his point with shocking finality, he pulls the knife back and plunges it into his own forearm. He grits his teeth, declaring that if the knife can't even cut an arm, it's absurd to believe it can be used to dismantle monsters. As blood drips from his self-inflicted wound, the other adventurers decide to retreat, unnerved by the crazy guy. Kazuya watches them go, muttering that they won't be back and that men like them have no right to make fun of Oda-san. Suddenly, a furious shout cuts through the air. Oda Mao grabs his bleeding arm, her face a mask of rage and disbelief. She screams at him, calling him an idiot and asking if he's trying to die. The commotion alerts the guild staff. The receptionist, Shimizu, panics and yells for someone named Harumi to bring potions and bandages, noting that Kazuya is completely out of mana. Oda Mao, however, ignores the calls for help. Gripping his arm tightly, she screams at him to shut up. When Kazuya asks why she's doing this, she yells back that she doesn't know, only that if he dies, it's the end. Her anger dissolves into tears. She cries that he won't get any stronger this way, and that by dying, he will never see his loved ones again. Her words are a desperate, painful plea. Stunned by her raw emotion, Kazuya can't find any words. He internally questions why he was so speechless then, and can only manage a quiet apology. In the background, the guildmaster holds back the receptionist, telling her not to interfere. A short while later, the receptionist finishes bandaging his arm, assuring him he's okay now. Kazuya sits on the floor next to a quiet Oda Mao and offers her his thanks. Her somber expression shifts to one of intense resolve. She leans in close, looking him directly in the eyes, and asks if he would form a party with her. Kazuya is left stammering, completely caught off guard by the proposal. He accepts her offer with unbridled enthusiasm, leaning in close. With a wide, earnest smile, he declares that with her by his side, he feels he can become much stronger. Oda Mao flinches away, her face flushed red with a mixture of embarrassment and anger at his sudden proximity and forwardness. Their new partnership immediately devolves into a squabble. Kazuya confidently asserts that he will, of course, be the leader. Oda Mao furiously objects, questioning why he should lead when he can't even fight, and then shouts at him to shut up. Observing from the side, the guild receptionist Harumi smiles, noting that they seem to get along quite well, an observation that seems to amuse Guild Master Jinai and the other adventurer. Following a grueling training session, Kinzuya Sato lets out a breath of exhaustion, his back muscles tense. His hands, wrapped in bandages, finally release their grip after completing what appears to be his 950th repetition of an exercise. He is startled by his mother, who calls out that breakfast is ready. Noticing his intensity, she asks if something good happened. Kinzuya, beaming, reassures her that he's just following his training plan and not overdoing it, then excitedly presents a document to his family at the breakfast table. His brother takes the document and realizes it's an adventurer certificate, meaning Kinzuya passed the exam. Kinzuya proudly confirms this, boasting that he successfully defeated 35 cockatrices to achieve it. His father examines the certificate, his eyes widening in amazement. He points out that Kinzuya has even achieved rank 2, a higher rank than their own. As he rushes out the door with a piece of toast, Kinzuya thanks them for the meal and promises to be back for dinner. Watching him leave, Kinzuya's brother reflects on the past, admitting he hadn't realized how much pain Kinzuya was in before. A small smile forms on his face as he concludes that it's good his brother seems to have made some friends during the break. His father looks on with a hint of melancholy, wishing he had more opportunities to act like a cool dad. His mother chides him, saying he should be happy their son is growing up. Meanwhile, Kinzuya runs off, apologizing for being late to his meeting. He arrives at a cafe, finding Harumi and Oda Mao already seated. Harumi greets him warmly, but Oda immediately scolds him for being late and making a senior adventurer wait. Unfazed, Harumi kindly asks him what kind of juice he would like. After their drinks arrive, Kinzuya is overcome with emotion, tears of joy streaming down his face. He is simply ecstatic to be in a cafe with two beautiful women. Oda asks why he's crying, and Harumi dryly explains it's because Oda had threatened him earlier. Harumi then presents him with a case filled with cash. She cheerfully announces that it's his payment for the defeated monsters, totaling 10 million yen. Kinzuya stammers a thank you, to which Oda retorts that he's being too loud and should show a better reaction. Oda's expression turns serious as she recalls him slashing his own arm, sternly warning him never to pull a stunt like that again. She then asks if he has returned to the guild. Kinzuya explains he's been immersed in training but will start going again next week. His demeanor then shifts, and he states seriously that there is something he needs to discuss with them. He clarifies that his serious topic was not just a whim. With Harumi looking on encouragingly, he looks directly at Oda Mao and formally asks her to form an official party with him. In response to his directness, a flustered Oda looks away but agrees, stammering her acceptance and thanks. In exchange for her agreement, Kinzuya seems pleased. He then sets a crucial condition for their partnership. He insists that they must both promise, under all circumstances, to survive. He will only accept her into the party if she agrees to this vow. As he makes his promise, Harumi steps forward, presenting him with a small, cushioned item. She explains it is a return stone, a final hope that allows an adventurer to teleport back to the guild by wishing for it. Kinzuya recognizes it instantly as a teleport item from the game he used to play and accepts it. With the terms set, the two adventurers decide to formally introduce themselves. He extends a hand, stating his name is Sato Kinzuya. She grasps his hand firmly, replying that she is Oda Mao. She seems slightly taken aback by the formality, her gaze averted. Kinzuya, sensing this, tells her she can just call him by his first name. In the background, Harumi observes their budding partnership with a warm smile. Seeing them finalize their arrangement, Harumi asks Kinzuya if he still has some time, offering to take him somewhere nice. Her offer catches him by surprise, his face flushing with excitement and confusion. He stammers Oda's name, wondering aloud what this place could be, clearly pleased by the invitation. Oda leads him to a grand establishment, which she announces is the finest weapon and armor store in all of Shizuoka. Kinzuya stares in awe at the vast array of high-quality equipment displayed before him. She explains her reasoning. She knew he had broken his weapon and thought he might want a replacement. Kinzuya, his awe turning to boyish enthusiasm, begins pointing out the various weapons, identifying rapiers, daggers, and even morning stars, surprising Oda with his extensive knowledge. He and Oda Mao arrive at the weapon shop, where they were greeted by its owner, a massive, helmeted man named Sugiyama. With a booming voice, he welcomed Oda and acknowledged Kinzuya, stating that Oda had told him all about him. The blacksmith immediately asked to see Kinzuya's hands. As Sugiyama inspected them, Oda asked if he could find a suitable weapon for her new partner. Kinzuya, meanwhile, was completely awestruck by the sheer presence of the master craftsman, thinking him incredibly cool. After his inspection, Sugiyama declared Kinzuya to be quite the warrior. He noted that his hands showed extensive use of clubs and swords, a rarity now that guns were more common. Impressed, Sugiyama offered to let him choose from his finest works, leading them into a private gallery. Sugiyama presented a magnificent sword forged from high-quality dragon bone, praising it as an excellent weapon for both attack and defense with inherent magic resistance. Kinzuya was stunned by how light it was, a feature Sugiyama proudly attributed to his careful work. The blacksmith then stated the price without mercy, 2 million yen. However, Kinzuya's gaze fell upon a different item entirely, a simple black club. Sugiyama identified it as a magical stick named Sugiyama Deluxe, made of 100% pure mithril. Oda was surprised by his interest, and Kinzuya himself was shocked to learn the material was pure mithril, a fact Sugiyama confirmed with pride, admitting its ridiculous power. He examined the weapon, realizing it was a magic staff. Sugiyama warned him that it would take a long while to master. Despite the warning, Kinzuya made his choice instantly, declaring, "I picked this one." His decision left both Oda and the blacksmith completely bewildered. Without another word, Kinzuya took a powerful practice swing. The force of emotion startled Sugiyama, who demanded to know if Kinzuya hadn't heard him say it was a weapon for magic users. He ignored the blacksmith's outburst, his focus entirely on the staff in his hands. The single word, mithril, resonated in his mind as he felt the weapon's unique properties. A realization struck him as he examined the staff's core. It was a material specifically designed to raise magic efficiency. He finally understood. With the staff, he could learn magic. Furthermore, by increasing his proficiency with it, his buff and heal spells would become significantly more efficient. A new path had just opened up for him. He excitedly accepts the mithril staff, marveling at the rare and powerful weapon. The blacksmith, Sugiyama, confirms it is his finest creation in 40 years of work. As Kinzuya eagerly agrees to take it, Oda Mao observes that despite Sugiyama's recommendations to magicians, no one ever wanted the staff because it was too heavy and most people now prefer guns. His enthusiasm is cut short by the blacksmith's stern declaration. Sugiyama states that while it is his masterpiece, he must first test the boy. With an intense gaze from behind his helmet, he declares his intent to see if Kinzuya is truly worthy of wielding it. The sudden shift in tone leaves Kinzuya bewildered, questioning what the blacksmith means by a test. Seeing the massive blacksmith adopt a combat-ready posture, a panicked Oda Mao calls out, questioning if he truly intends to go all out against the child. Ignoring her, Sugiyama instructs Kinzuya to ready his weapon, stating he will now gauge his capabilities. He turns to his concerned companion, telling her not to worry. His expression shifts from youthful excitement to focused determination. He clarifies that he is merely taking a stance, his eyes fixed on the imposing figure before him. The blacksmith observes the boy's sudden change in demeanor with approval. Through his helmet, he remarks that Kinzuya has a fine expression, one that looks just as an adventurer should. Inside a weapon shop, a young adventurer with a headband slams his hand on the counter, angrily demanding to know why a weapons store has no guns. He shouts at the shopkeeper, asking if he was heard. In response, the adventurer is sent flying backward across the room with a cry of pain, crashing violently into the shop's interior. The shopkeeper, Sugiyama, stands with his fist still clenched from the blow. He declares that the adventurer's reliance on guns has made him an undisciplined coward, and that worthless people like him shouldn't pretend to be adventurers. As the downed adventurer curses him, Sugiyama acknowledges that the style of fighting has indeed changed over the past few decades. He reflects on how more and more adventurers have stopped using melee weapons, choosing to use guns instead. This trend is a topic of discussion among veterans. One notes that while it's a logical way to fight, wanting to take down enemies safely from a distance, it's also the reason adventurers have started slacking in their training and have stopped wanting to grow stronger. Sugiyama internally concedes the point. Looking over his stock of melee weapons, he admits to himself that he had no choice but to follow the market trends if he wanted to keep food on the table. But as he grips a heavy club, his resolve hardens. He could not allow that decline to continue. He had made excuses, telling himself that times had changed. Yet, his thoughts turn to a recent customer. He muses on the fact that a boy like Kinzuya still exists, one who stands before him with eyes wide with excitement while holding a simple club. Seeing the boy's determined face, Sugiyama realizes that despite his own age, he found himself feeling hopeful again. He calls out to the boy. He then asks Kinzuya if he truly understands the nature of the grueling path he has chosen. He held out a massive, crude club, suggesting that with guns, Kinzuya would be able to grow stronger much more easily. Kinzuya, with a look of distaste, flatly refused the offer. He elaborated, his expression hardening with resolve, that the easy strength offered by such weapons was not the kind he wanted to achieve. His declaration piqued the shopkeeper's interest. With a low chuckle, Sugiyama found the boy interesting and challenged him to demonstrate the path he had chosen. In response, Kinzuya felt a surge of confusion, not understanding the shopkeeper's intent. He knew he couldn't use his full abilities in this place. As Sugiyama set his own weapon aside, Kinzuya's focus narrowed on the one thing he wanted to be. His thoughts were shattered as an immense pressure suddenly bore down on him, his eyes widening in pure shock. The pressure triggered a violent reaction. A dark, monstrous aura of pure bloodlust erupted from Kinzuya's form. The shopkeeper watched, stunned, questioning how a mere middle schooler could possess such a terrifying presence. Just as suddenly, the oppressive atmosphere vanished. The shopkeeper, now holding a massive, ornate battle axe, apologized, admitting he was merely testing the boy. Convinced, he offered to sell him the Sugiyama Deluxe. He held the weapon out to Kinzuya, stating the terms of their deal. In exchange for the weapon, Kazuya must bring it back for regular maintenance. Without hesitation, Kazuya accepted the terms. Clutching his new weapon, he made a firm promise to become stronger. The shopkeeper watched, a hint of approval in his voice as he acknowledged the boy's impressive willpower and tenacity. Having witnessed the intense encounter, Oda now confronts the massive weaponsmith, Sugiyama. She demands to know what he was doing with a boy like Kazuya. He explains that the only ones who dare challenge him are the stupid, the reckless, or those truly ready to risk their lives. Recalling the moment, Sugiyama notes that Kazuya gave him a look as if he was genuinely about to kill him, concluding that the boy is not normal. Oda listens, questioning if she can keep up with someone like that. She dismisses his concerns with a wave of her hand, insisting Kazuya is just a normal brat, though she admits he scared her at first. Sugiyama retorts, asking if she truly understands how amazing the boy is, before playfully poking her in the side and calling her selfish. Kazuya, having overheard their exchange, simply states, "I see." Now walking beside Oda, his sudden proximity makes her jump, her eyes wide with surprise. Watching them leave, Sugiyama allows a small smile, musing to himself that the two of them might make a good team after all. As they walk, Kazuya explains that he paid the full 10 million yen for the weapon in cash, a move that clearly surprised the weaponsmith. He pats the large case on his back with a grin, declaring that because of it, he now possesses an incredible weapon. Oda looks at him with a soft, genuine smile, agreeing that it's great. To thank her for forming a party with him, Kazuya then presents her with a gift, an ornate mithril carving knife. He explains that Sugiyama threw it in as an extra. Oda is stunned by the gesture, recognizing the knife's immense value, while Kazuya and Sugiyama shout their thanks to each other. Flustered, she insists she isn't doing this for his sake and is only in it for the money. Then, more quietly, she thanks him for keeping the weirdos away from her, a slight blush on her cheeks. She accepts the mithril knife, a faint blush on her cheeks as she quietly offers her thanks. Her gaze remains on him as she softly speaks his name, the moment hanging between them. Turning away, she quickly adds that she is the one who should be thanking him. With their partnership seemingly settled, she asks if they will be going hunting the next day. Kazuya, however, apologizes, explaining that he has other plans. Her expression shifts to one of surprise, questioning his commitment immediately after they agreed to form a party. He clarifies his intention, stating that he simply thinks it's time he should attend school. His unexpected answer leaves her momentarily speechless, her mind processing his desire to go to school. To explain further, he shows her his phone. On the screen is an announcement for the Shizuoka Prefecture's Middle School Swordsman Spring Tournament, an event welcoming first-year students to determine the strongest among them. He points out that this is the event he's interested in. She immediately recognizes it as the famous newcomer event for middle school swordsmen. Kazuya confirms he wants to give it a try. With a smirk, Oda remarks that if a delinquent wants to attend school, she won't stop him, prompting him to quickly object to the label. As he looks closer at the registration details, a look of panic crosses his face when he realizes today is the last day to sign up. Oblivious to his sudden distress, Oda offers him a confident smile and wishes him good luck, expressing her certainty that he will win. Her encouragement is cut short by his cry of frustration. As she walks away, she reflects with a hint of amusement that he really is just a brat. In a classroom, an instructor wearing a distinctive visor addresses the students, including Kazuya. He announces that the following week will feature a tournament, which will serve as both a mixer and a welcome for the main school. He continues, singling out one promising student and telling him that a strong performance will earn a recommendation for the prefecture tournament. The crowd of students erupts with excitement. The instructor cautions that while the specifics of the fights are secret, they should perform well. A boisterous student named Naruko loudly proclaims he will win, prompting his masked friend, Shigeru, to tell him to stop acting like a child. Naruko ignores the comment, declaring a huge chance so early in the school year. Across the room, a young woman expresses her confidence that a certain Nane-san will succeed, while the instructor reminds everyone to stay focused. He warns them that students from higher grades may also participate, and that the first years should simply focus on not getting seriously injured, conjuring images of chaotic battles in the students' minds. The warning is grimly reinforced by the fact that every year, many first-year students end up in a hospital. A memory of a student being violently thrown through the air flashes by. But there is a glimmer of hope. The instructor adds that it is possible to defeat the upperclassmen. A single foot steps forward with purpose. The instructor introduces the newcomer, Tanya, the student council president. He explains she is there to give them encouragement, as she herself accomplished that very feat last year. Naruko immediately shouts, asking his upperclassmen how she won. Karen calmly recalls that last year's competition involved monster subjugations. She reveals her own victory, stating that she defeated a Cockatrice in 2 hours. Kazuya is struck with awe at her achievement. Nearby, Shigeru asks if Cockatrices are E-rank, but Naruko clarifies that their rank depends on the specimen, with some being as high as D rank. In a classroom, Tanya addresses her peers about the upcoming tournament. While the specific challenge remains unknown, she declares her firm intention to win. Beside her, Another student expresses hope that the competition will inspire everyone to grow stronger together. As she speaks, the instructor with the visor places a hand on her shoulder, his rings glinting. He quietly cautions her, "Tanya, you don't provoke them." His warning is directed at a student with two-toned hair and sunglasses, whom he addresses as Kageyama. The student looks on with a bored expression, remarking on the presence of his super-powerful school-skipping cheater this year and idly wondering what they should do if he appears. Leaning back with an air of superiority, Kageyama concedes, "You're right, Kazuya is powerful." His dismissive tone provokes a sharp response from Tanya. She turns to him, her expression hardening, and states that calling Kazuya a cheater is rude, as Kageyama has no idea how hard he has worked. She continues, revealing she heard he even defeated a grizzly, a memory of Kazuya facing the beast flashing by. Kageyama merely scoffs, questioning how she would know he had skills even before entering school. He leans back lazily, hand behind his head, and asks how anyone is supposed to get excited for the tournament with that knowledge. Staring him down, Tanya delivers a final, quiet rebuke. "You're nothing next to him either, right, Tanya-senpai?" she asks, though her tone makes his statement. Unfazed, Kageyama stands and announces that since the school bell has rung, he's going to sign up. As he walks off, Naruko and Shigeru watch him go, wondering about their new, arrogant classmate. Outside the school building, Kazuya overhears the sentiment. He stands alone, reflecting on Kageyama's words, a look of understanding on his face. Elsewhere, in a school hallway, a student with short hair and glasses thinks to herself about Tanya. She voices her admiration to a friend, remarking on Tanya's incredible tenacity, which borders on insanity, and her unquantifiable strength. Their conversation is interrupted by an energetic first-year student, Mano Tsuyoshi. He nervously thanks them for their encouraging words, explaining he enrolled at the school because he looks up to them. One of the girls calmly asks what he wanted to discuss. He explains that during the entrance ceremony, when the principal was about to force him into a public skill appraisal, it was Kazuya Sato who saved him. The memory flashes by, showing the principal's aggressive posture and Karen's surprise. Mano continues, noting that Kazuya hasn't been to school since that day, and he was worried, wondering if he was all right. Hearing this, the friend with the ponytail turns to Tanya, confused, and asks why Mano is asking her specifically about Kazuya. Her face flushing with a deep blush. Karen is taken aback as her friend leans in and pointedly asks if she and Kazuya are dating. Karen explodes in a flustered panic, grabbing her friend by the collar. She shouts that they're absolutely not dating and that she doesn't even have his phone number. Shaking her friend back and forth, she frantically tries to clarify that Kazuya is just a friend. Suddenly, a new student with wild blonde hair bursts in, pointing an accusatory finger. He declares that he's heard she's dating a first year, before roaring that she is supposed to be his girlfriend. He watched as Tanya tried to explain the situation to the first-year student, Mano. She recounted how she had rescued another third-year, Sasahara, who then developed strange ideas about their relationship. As she spoke, Mano began to understand the pattern of unwanted attention she attracted. The misunderstanding only fueled the blonde rival's rage. Believing Karen was talking about him, his expression hardened. He glared at Mano, demanding to know if he was the one, and muttering that this was unforgivable, even as Mano tried to stammer out a denial. With a furious roar, he lunged toward the terrified first year, screaming that he would never be forgiven. Mano cried out, bracing for the impact. Before his attack could land, Karen stepped between them, effortlessly blocking the charge with her forearm. Her expression was one of pure annoyance. She looked down at the boy, her eyes cold. Mistaking him for the other suitor, she addressed him as Sasaharkin and warned him that she was in a very bad mood. Confused by the name, the rival could only questioningly utter her name. Her anger intensified. With a dark look, she declared that because of her mood, she wouldn't be holding back today. With a sharp motion, she delivered a single, powerful blow that sent him flying backward with a choked cry of pain. He crashed to the ground, completely incapacitated. Karen stood over him, coolly instructing him not to call her by name without using proper honorifics, before pausing to add another thought. She stood over his dazed form as Mano, witnessing the display, cautiously corrected himself, calling out Tanya. Her stern demeanor vanished, replaced by flustered embarrassment as she realized her mistake. She tried to explain that it wasn't on purpose, but Mano and his female companion were simply in awe. The girl praised Tanya-senpai for being so cool and amazing, leaving Karen speechless. A high-pitched whine suddenly cut through the air, the sound of a rapidly spinning wheel. One of the students nearby wondered aloud what the noise could be. The source of the sound revealed itself as a scooter, which screeched to a halt just before them. Two figures, their faces obscured by helmets, were aboard the vehicle, startling the onlooking students. The driver, Oda Mao, angrily berated her passenger, Kazuya, reminding him that she had repeatedly told him to at least check the schedule. She insisted she had already apologized for the mix-up. Their chaotic arrival stunned Tanya, who then shouted with frantic urgency that they had only 5 minutes left and must check in immediately. Her outburst subsided into a moment of confused recognition as she stared at the pair. She noted that Kazuya had arrived together with Oda, murmuring Mao-chan to herself. Beside her, the flustered ponytail-wearing student pointed a trembling finger at Kazuya, beginning to ask who he was. The defeated blonde rival, still lying on the ground, looked up in confusion. At the same time, Kazuya, seemingly ignoring the student's question, casually greeted Karen as if they were old acquaintances, saying it had been a long time. At the Student Affairs office, Kazuya Sato's registration is finalized. The screen confirms his entry into the competition, and the official behind the desk addresses him by name. As he turns, he finds a tense scene unfolding. An aggressive blonde student is being held back by a girl with a ponytail, while Tanya looks on. She turns to Kazuya, surprised, noting that she didn't expect him to compete as well. Walking away from the commotion, Karen expresses her relief that they made it in time to register. She adds that she was sure he didn't care about school at all, but Kazuya quietly refutes her assumption. His mind flashes back to his solitary training sessions. He remembers the strain, the sweat, and the growing realization that he was approaching the absolute limit of what he could achieve by himself. The memory fuels his resolve, and his hand clenches into a tight, determined fist. He looks at Karen, his expression now firm. He explains that he believes participating in the tournament is a necessary step, one that might make him stronger. Internally, however, he admits to another motivation. He is also curious to see just how strong other people his age truly are. His thoughts are interrupted as the blonde rival dismissively says he's going home. Before he can leave, Karen lunges forward, grabbing his jacket and demanding to know how he knows someone named Mao-chan. The sudden, intense question leaves both Kazuya and Karen momentarily stunned and confused. A cool voice cuts through the tension. Oda Mao stands before them. She asks if they're saying they've formed a party together. When Kazuya cautiously asks if she's angry, she denies it, her face unreadable as she calls it an incredible coincidence. The blonde rival continues his tirade, revealing a surprising connection to Karen. He explains that her older sister used to be in a party with Oda Mao, a flashback showing a fierce battle with a powerful female warrior at its center. Kazuya, taken aback by the news, asks if Oda Mao left the group. The rival confirms it, noting that their party was famous before Karen's sister left the prefecture to study at university. He elaborates that due to the recent increase in monster activity, he believes she is now risking her life, exploring the country to study and fight them, as images of her facing down fearsome beasts flash through his mind. Karen's expression sours. She mutters under her breath that Oda Mao just can't seem to leave people like him alone, a hint of resentment in her tone. The blonde rival's focus snaps back to Kazuya, grabbing him by the uniform. He calls Kazuya reckless and reveals he hasn't even registered for the competition at school, telling him to leave it to him. Kazuya grunts, annoyed at his own oversight. Before the situation can escalate, Karen steps between them with a bright smile, asking if Kazuya is okay. She then turns that same smile, now laced with menace, on the rival, warning him that she won't forgive him if he makes Oda Mao cry. With the confrontation over, Karen and Kazuya sit by a fountain in the school courtyard. She cheerfully offers to show him around, but he seems hesitant, explaining that he had planned to go train. She dismisses his plans, telling him not to be shy. Kazuya looks away, clearly irritated, and insists that he is not being shy. Unseen by the pair, two figures observe them from a nearby staircase. One confirms Kazuya's identity to the other, stating with certainty that it is him. The observers report to a student named Kageyama, who smirks while looking at a tablet. They inform him that Kazuya has also signed up for the competition, and they express fear that Kageyama might send him to the hospital, making victory a secondary concern. He leans in close to his companion, his sunglasses reflecting the dim light. He poses a question, asking if the man knows the most important thing when facing a boss. The man in the beanie looks back, utterly bewildered. The bewildered man stammers, guessing if it's teammates, but Kageyama dismisses the idea, stating he's referring to something even more fundamental. His expression hardens, his eyes wide with intensity behind his sunglasses. The most important thing, he declares, is information, knowing an opponent's capabilities and, just as crucially, their limitations. With this principle in mind, his first step is to investigate everything about his target. He resolves to gather this data at the school gymnasium, already visualizing a successful outcome. Meanwhile, Kazuya and the student with the ponytail arrive at that very location, the vast school gymnasium. She explains that this will be the venue for the competition and that it remains unlocked for students to use freely. Kazuya stares, impressed by the scale of the arena. He continues to gaze at the arena, as his companion remarks on the likely nervousness of the participants, with the tournament starting the very next day. Kazuya quietly agrees. His observation proves correct as he watches other students attempting to train. One, a man with slick back hair, complains of being tired. Another student points out that almost nobody can concentrate, and worse, it doesn't look like anyone is enjoying themselves. Kazuya watches them, his expression thoughtful. Among the students are Naruko and Shigeru, engaged in a one-sided basketball drill. Naruko, full of energy, demands another 100 balls. A weary Shigeru refuses, but Naruko taunts him into continuing, before launching the ball with explosive speed. Shigeru catches the ball, just inches from his face, his grip firm. Naruko grins fiercely, praising his partner's reflexes. Shigeru's eyes narrow over his mask as he declares his intent to kill Naruko in their training, a challenge Naruko accepts with manic delight. This intense exchange does not go unnoticed. The ponytail-wearing student remarks on the nice training, calling out to Kazuya. He, however, remains silent, a bead of sweat tracing its way down his temple as he stares at the raw power on display. He stands beside the ponytail-haired student as two fully armored knights charge them. The one in rounded armor swings his sword horizontally, shouting for the attack to commence. The blade slices through the air with a sharp sound. Kazuya's eyes widen in alarm as the armored man lets out a powerful roar, his attack closing in. From stands above the gymnasium floor, Kageyama observes the confrontation. He watches Kazuya facing not one, but two armored opponents, and murmurs his assessment of the situation. He thoughtfully touches his chin, a realization dawning on him. Attacking Kazuya from a blind spot, he concludes, would be ineffective. Down in the arena, the round-helmeted knight's attack misses its mark. He turns, startled, to find Kazuya now positioned directly behind him. Kazuya's voice is low and intense as he demands to know the identity of his assailants. The knight whirls around, swinging his sword again, but Kazuya effortlessly ducks beneath the blade, his expression focused and unwavering. He drops low to the ground, the sword passing harmlessly overhead. The maneuver places him in a vulnerable position between both the round-helmeted knight and his T-visor companion. Observing this exchange, Kageyama's lips curl into a faint smirk. He notes to himself that fighting two opponents at once seems to be easy for Kazuya. Back on his feet, Kazuya stands ready, facing both armored warriors. He internally confirms that this level of challenge was what he had anticipated, realizing his combat skills are just as effective against people. Suddenly, the ponytail-haired student grabs his shoulder, her voice filled with alarm. She calls out his name, asking what in the world he is doing, snapping him out of his intense focus. Having witnessed Kazuya's overwhelming skill, Kageyama's expression darkens with a competitive smirk. He internally resolves to discover a method to surpass him. In response, Kazuya meets the unspoken challenge with a confident grin, his fist clenching slightly in anticipation. His opponents, however, are less than impressed with his display. Back in the gymnasium, the armored man with the T-shaped visor roars in frustration, accusing Kazuya of being a cheating bastard as he and his companion hold their ground. As Kazuya faces off against two armored figures, Tanya rushes to intervene, shouting for them to stop. She reminds Kazuya that students are forbidden from dueling without the school's permission. Unconcerned, Kazuya simply tells her he'll be fine and settles into a low fighting stance. He responds with a confident grin, declaring that he doesn't mind the rules as long as he gets to fight. His casual demeanor infuriates the armored opponents, who take it as a sign of disrespect, believing he is looking down on them. In response, the knight with the rounded helmet lunges forward, swinging his sword. Kazuya deftly dodges the attack, surprising the knight by engaging with bare hands, and lands a solid punch to his helmet, counting it as the first blow. He roars with excitement, demanding the next opponent come at him. The other armored man watches in disbelief, realizing that fists are the weapon of a high-ranked job, and that Kazuya shouldn't be able to use them yet. This confidence stems from a past realization. Kazuya recalls wanting to use his fists first due to their versatility, but no matter how many other skill proficiencies he managed to max out, one crucial skill remained elusive. Despite his efforts, fist proficiency never appeared on his skill sheet, which clearly showed maxed out levels for abilities like mace proficiency and body reinforcement. He could only think of one reason for this discrepancy while studying his options. His personal level was simply not high enough to unlock the skill. This led him to a firm conclusion. Since he hadn't been able to level up by fighting monsters, he would try to level up by fighting against people instead. Back in the present, he puts this theory into practice, closing the distance to the round helmet knight with a sudden burst of speed. The knight misinterprets the charge as an attempt to flee, but is stunned when Kazuya's bare fist intercepts his sword swing. The knight is left speechless, questioning how a bare fist could possess so much power. He holds his ground against the armored warrior's assault, realizing that if he can remain calm and carefully observe his opponent, he can find an opening. This intense focus allows him to anticipate the knight's movements, deftly dodging every swing of the heavy sword. He understands that whether facing monsters or humans, observation is paramount. The second armored warrior watches, baffled, wondering if Kazuya feels any fear of injury. Despite his successful evasions, the cost of his earlier block becomes painfully apparent. He looks down at his hands, bruised and trembling, realizing the bones within them have broken from the repeated impacts against the knight's armor. His fists, he concludes with grim acceptance, are not yet true weapons. Undeterred by the pain, he looks up at the armored knight with fierce determination. He declares that his purpose is to forge his fists into weapons, and that he'll need the knight's help for a while longer. The warrior glares back, incensed by the boy's audacity. As the duel intensifies, Kageyama watches the live feed on his laptop from the sidelines. A wide, smug grin spreads across his face as he analyzes the fight, noting that Kazuya's speed, power, and technique are all far beyond what one would expect from a mere middle schooler. He is not the only one impressed. Shigeru lets out a breath, his eyes wide with amazement above his mask. From a distance, sitting on the ground, Tanya watches intently, acknowledging to herself that Kazuya is indeed a worthy target to win over. In stark contrast to the other's admiration, Naruko is overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face. Shigeru looks at him, bewildered, asking what is wrong. Another student pats Naruko's back, attempting to console him by saying that he, too, will become strong one day. Meanwhile, the battle rages on. The armored knight grows increasingly frustrated, unable to comprehend how Kazuya can fight so effectively barehanded. He notes the boy's attacks are not only incredibly fast, but also strong. Kazuya, however, taunts him, declaring he's bored of being chased and demanding the knight come at him. The taunt has its desired effect. Roaring for him to shut up, the knight lunges forward, his sword connecting with Kazuya's side. As the blow lands, Kazuya internally confirms that this is exactly what he wanted. The force of the strike sends him sprawling to the ground. The armored knight stands over him, momentarily victorious. It is a clear demonstration that when fighting other people, verbal attacks can be a highly effective tactic. He remained on the floor, a defiant smirk on his face as he looked up at the armored knight. Kazuya asked if a certain person was the one he was looking for, prompting an irritated reply from the knight about his persistent staring. His gaze, however, drifted past the knight, fixing on a figure seated in the spectator stands. He wondered internally if that was the person who had sent this fighter after him. The knight's eyes widened in sudden comprehension. Seeing this reaction, Kazuya confirmed his suspicion. He had been right all along. Now certain of his true opponent, Kazuya's expression hardened. The knight, realizing he was being ignored and used as a pawn, bellowed in fury and lunged forward to strike again. Kazuya's focus remained unbroken on the distant figure, who appeared to mouth a questioning "what?" in response to the intense stare. From his seat high above, Kageyama acknowledged the attention, noting coolly that the boy on the arena floor was looking directly at him. Accepting the silent challenge, Kazuya clenched his fist, a new resolve burning in his eyes. He declared for all to hear, "Watch this." He prepared to demonstrate his current level of strength, but the enraged knight cut him short, roaring as he unleashed a punch charged with his full power. The blow connected squarely with Kazuya's face, a brutal impact of force and metal. He not only withstands the blow, but reverses it, sending the armored knight flying across the training hall with a single, explosive impact. As the knight crashes to the ground, Kageyama watches from the stands, a smirk on his face. He laughs, acknowledging Kazuya's impressive power, but derisively calling him a cheater. His taunts continue as he leans forward, a wide, malicious grin spreading across his face. He declares that tomorrow, he will personally tear the sheep's clothing right off of Kazuya and that he looks forward to it. Nearby, Tanya rushes to the fallen knight's side, asking if he is all right. As she watches Kazuya, she silently wonders if she stands any chance at all against such power. As Karen grapples with her uncertainty, Kazuya looks down at his own hand, a faint energy shimmering around it. He internally resolves that he cannot lose here. His determination is mirrored by Karen, whose expression hardens. She, too, finds her own resolve, thinking that she must win in order to catch up to her older sister. The grand competition has begun. A festive but tense atmosphere settles over the school grounds, where food stalls operate under banners announcing the event. For the students gathered, this day marks the start of fierce battles that will shape their future. From a stage, a flamboyant announcer in a top hat and goggles rallies the crowd. He calls for thunderous cheers for the swordsmen of Shizuoka Prefecture Middle School, his voice booming over the loudspeakers. Amidst the growing excitement, Mano Tsuyoshi notices Kazuya's unease and asks what's wrong. Kazuya admits that he's just not good with this kind of atmosphere. From afar, the announcer mentions he has been nominated as this year's presenter. Mano reminds him that the welcoming tournament is part of the day's events, to which Kazuya can only offer a vague agreement. Elsewhere in the crowd, two heavily armored students discuss the day's importance. They agree that whether they achieve good results or not, the tournament will have a huge impact on the rest of their school lives. His friend's observation about the heavily equipped participants prompts Mano to look at Kazuya with concern. He notes the many students in full body armor, then points out that all Kazuya has is the case on his back, questioning if he'll be all right. Kazuya simply affirms that he will. Suddenly, all eyes turn to the stage. Tanya, the student council president, greets the assembly. She is clad in a full suit of armor, a sight that causes a stir in the crowd. Thanking everyone for attending the spring tournament, she grips the microphone and states that as last year's winner, she has a vow to make. Her expression hardens with resolve. She swears that she will win this year's tournament as well, no matter what. From the crowd, a stunned Kazuya whispers her name. Before she can say more, the announcer cuts in, reminding President Tanya that this is also a welcome event for the school. The interruption does little to quell the unease, as students murmur about how scary and completely different she seems today. Mano turns to Kazuya, noting that since this year they have that first year, Kazuya's gaze remains fixed forward, his expression now serious and unreadable. He observes the heavily armored students. A flicker of annoyance crossing his face at the tense atmosphere he feels is based on a misunderstanding. On stage, the flamboyant announcer begins, declaring that he will now present the rules for this year's competition. With a flourish, the announcer reveals the tournament structure on a large screen. He explains that participants will be split into 2 blocks for a tournament battle, with the winner of each block facing off in the finals. Victory is achieved by knockout or surrender, and all weapons except firearms are permitted. He declares the rules to be nice and simple. Elsewhere in the crowd, students react to the bracket announcements. Naruko groans, realizing he has to face Tanya's senpai so soon. His companion points out that she and Nane-san are in the same block, while Shigeru is in Block B. Naruko agrees that it's mostly as predicted, but his eyes then fall on the bracket for block, spotting Kinzuya's name among the competitors. Kinzuya, standing with the ponytail student, takes in the sight of the other participants. She observes that they are all third years, their imposing armor creating a palpable pressure. Meanwhile, from a viewing area, 2 faculty members watch the proceedings. A teacher with distinctive angular glasses expresses concern to Principal Todoroki, questioning if this is going too far, as she saw him with the other first years yesterday. The principal, however, dismisses her worry, stating it was nothing and was done at the request of the PDA. He chuckles, congratulating himself on a job well done. His attention is suddenly broken as the aggressive, blonde-haired student confronts him directly. The student declares that everything is now perfectly set up for their kid to win and that today marks the last day anyone will pay special attention to Kinzuya. He sneers, telling Kinzuya he'll be run over and should say goodbye to Tanya-san. Kinzuya internally wishes this confrontation wouldn't take so long, as the rival adds that it's only a matter of time before Kinzuya regrets everything. As the taunts continue, a figure suddenly blurs past the crowd and onto the stage. Tanya has snatched the microphone from the startled announcer. She leans into the microphone, her voice echoing across the venue. She addresses Kinzuya by name, proposing a special rule just for him. In response, Kinzuya's gaze sweeps over the entire assembly of armored students. He speaks into the microphone, his voice now carrying the same weight as hers. He proposes his own challenge, just him versus everyone here. He then turns his attention towards the viewing area, directly addressing the principal for his decision. Tanya watches him, her expression unreadable but intense. His declaration to fight everyone echoed through the hall, drawing a sharp, incredulous reaction from his blonde-haired rival. The rival's eyes widened in a mixture of shock and fury as he mouthed a single word. What? He was not the only one taken aback. From a viewing area, Principal Todoroki stared, his mouth agape in utter bewilderment, struggling to form a coherent sound. His disbelief was mirrored by the students. Kageyama bluntly called the challenger crazy, while Shigeru coolly observed that their companion, Naruko, was crying again, a fact the spiky-haired boy vehemently denied. As the murmurs of disbelief spread, Tanya stared down at the stage, her eyes wide with shock as she whispered Kinzuya's name. She watched as Kinzuya stood firm before the silent, stunned assembly. He had heard their whispers, their desire for power. I heard that, he announced into the microphone. Everyone here wants to learn skills. His words were met by the varied expressions of the students before him. Some armored and stoic, others like Kageyama and Shigeru, watching with detached curiosity. Their silence was broken as Kinzuya continued his proposition. He promised to teach the method for obtaining a skill to anyone who could defeat him. The offer was unprecedented. The principal, now conferring with a female teacher, reasoned that if students weren't interested in skills, they could simply ignore the challenge. Down on the floor, however, the blonde rival took it as a personal insult, laughing derisively and muttering that Kinzuya was just making fun of them. His derision was met with a chillingly calm response. Kinzuya's expression hardened as he promised to personally teach his rival just how strict the school can be, addressing him as Mr. Exceptional and telling him to prepare himself. In a vast arena, an announcer's voice echoes, declaring that the excitement has soared. A special match has been arranged, pitting a promising first-year student against a team of volunteering third years. The announcer identifies the third-year leader as Sasahara, a student with excellent grades. Down on the arena floor, the blonde, armored student named Sasahara smirks, surrounded by his allies, as the announcer wonders aloud if the lone first year can possibly make it out in one piece. Watching from the stands, Kinzuya observes the scene unfold. Nearby, Kageyama mutters under his breath, calling Kinzuya an idiot for standing out so much. Sasahara surveys the massive crowd of armored students gathered against his opponent, estimating there must be about 50 of them. He notes to a fellow student that while more than half took the challenge, it seems not everyone joined the fight against Kinzuya. Elsewhere in the audience, Tanya looks on with an exasperated sigh, wondering how in the world Kinzuya was raised to become such a battle-crazed maniac. The girl beside her remarks that she would like to see who his parents are. As Sasahara's hand tightens on the hilt of his sword, Karen watches him intently. She thinks to herself that he is mistaken, feeling confident that Kinzuya will be fine. On the arena floor, Kinzuya stands alone, armed with a metal bat. He internally remarks that it's his opponents he's worried about. Sasahara asks if he's scared by the large number of people, but Kinzuya simply replies, nah. From the stands, Karen warns him to hold back, while Oda Mao expresses disappointment that so few students came and that Karen isn't even participating. Oda Mao explains to the blonde rival that this tournament is said to be held every year to welcome the first years. He scoffs in response, declaring the rules to be absurd. He elaborates that in reality, it's more like a hazing ritual for them. A group of older, armored students nearby overhear and agree, recalling how much they also suffered back when they were first years. From a viewing box high above, the teacher with the angular glasses clears her throat and tells Principal Todoroki that she thinks he is right. The principal, gazing down at the arena, states his belief that the school intends to use this event to purge every troublemaker they can. A woman with short dark hair and glasses steps up to a microphone. She introduces herself to the competitors as Sasahara, the president of the PDA, who is running the tournament. The name Sasahara evokes a memory of a young, blonde-haired boy looking up in adoration at a warrior in full armor. "Mommy, you look great." He cheers, his voice filled with pride for his mother. However, the woman currently speaking, the PDA president, explains that this year's tournament will be a one-on-one affair, unlike last year. She claims the goal is to create a safe and peaceful environment where contestants can show off as much as they want. As she speaks, Tanya listens with a grim expression, aware that every year, people who engage in dishonest conduct are found among the participants. Nearby, a man is scolded for trying to film her without permission. Her words carry across the arena to Kinzuya. He understands the thinly veiled threat is aimed at him and others who have no respect for our school. She stands beside the principal, raising a hand as she declares that the school values tradition and order, and that people who ignore the rules will be punished to guide them onto the right path. Kinzuya internally dismisses it as a nasty speech. The match begins, and as the 50 opponents advance, he realizes this world is just like the game. Its essence is the same. With this understanding, his resolve solidifies. He grips his bat, knowing that to grow stronger, he must risk his life. He explodes into motion, lunging at the front line and swinging the bat with all his might. The weapon connects with the helmet of the first armored student in a shower of sparks. The powerful follow-through smashes into the student's head as Kinzuya steps into the attack, putting his full weight behind the blow. The student cries out, stumbling back from the impact. Instantly, another opponent, the knight with the rounded helmet, brings a massive sword down towards Kinzuya. He met the incoming blade not with a retreat, but with a ferocious counteroffensive, plunging directly into the chaotic swarm of armored upperclassmen. His wooden sword became a blur, deflecting and striking as he was completely surrounded. His initial assault left a trail of downed opponents. Standing amidst the fallen, Kinzuya calmly noted that 10 were down, with 40 yet to go. On the ground, Sasahara stared in disbelief, realizing this wasn't what he'd been told to expect. The shock was jarring. Sasahara's mind raced back to the assurances he'd received, that Kinzuya was weak, that he had only gotten into the school through connections and wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike. The memory contrasted sharply with the reality of Kinzuya standing before him, seemingly waiting. Annoyed by the inaction, Sasahara decided to press the attack himself. As he prepared to move, Tanya cried out for a shield, rushing to protect him. At the same moment, another armored upperclassman charged forward, bellowing his intent to strike. A powerful blow crashed down, met with a solid defense that sent sparks flying. The attacking knight sneered, declaring that his opponent wouldn't be able to withstand such powerful attacks. The sheer intensity of the combat broke the will of the other students. Citing upcoming exams and a fear of injury, they began to flee the arena. Sasahara watched in fury as his supposed allies abandoned him. With the crowd thinning, Kinzuya's focus shifted. He turned to Tanya and, with surprising politeness, stated that he looked forward to learning from her, effectively challenging her to a duel. Both she and Sasahara were stunned into silence. The duel with Karen would have to wait. The confrontation with Sasahara reached its conclusion, leaving the blonde student defeated on the ground. Kinzuya stood over him, calmly asking if he was no longer going to attack. He observed his fallen adversary, who had let his swords fall from his grasp. It became clear to Kinzuya that there was no deep-seated ambition here. Sasahara had no compelling reason to fight so desperately for a place at this school. He didn't hesitate. As Tanya shouted the signal, he lashed out with a powerful kick, sending another upperclassman flying. On the ground, the defeated Sasahara could only watch in disbelief. The kick, however, was a feint. His attention was instantly pulled away as a new group of heavily armored students charged down the hall. A voice cut through the noise, belonging to a student with distinctive two-toned hair and sunglasses, who calmly remarked that he hadn't even introduced himself. Kinzuya, caught off guard, could only wonder who this new challenger was. The newcomer stood confidently before his squadron of knights. He introduced himself as Kageyama Naozumi, commanding Kinzuya to remember the name of the one who would defeat him. Kinzuya's face twisted with fury. He snarled back, labeling Kageyama a cheating bastard for interfering. Kinzuya finds himself confronted by a large group of armored students. The one in the lead, his face obscured by a round helmet, asks who Kazuya is, before immediately stating that of course he wouldn't know them. The student continues, declaring that every single one of them hates him. From the crowd, Kageyama, with his distinctive two-tone hair, adds that they're all first years, just like Kazuya. With a smirk, he remarks that Kazuya has been favored enough to skip school until now, a fact that clearly breeds resentment. Kazuya listens, his expression unreadable. Within the group, the boisterous Naruko turns to his quiet, masked companion, Shigeru, asking if he heard the briefing. Naruko then admits to himself that he doesn't actually hate Kazuya. Despite Naruko's private feelings, the group's objective is clear. They believe they will never be able to win unless they defeat Kazuya, making his takedown their top priority. Kazuya stands alone, facing the hostile crowd. Moments later, Kageyama and the blonde student, Sasahara, are on the floor, having been swiftly defeated. Kageyama looks up with a sneer, sarcastically thanking his senpais and expressing gratitude for the golden opportunity. He continues his bitter commentary, calling their own attack dumb and lamenting that they charged in without any sort of plan. Kazuya stands over them, unimpressed by their failed assault. With a sharp motion, he tells them to leave this to the others now. From the ground, Sasahara looks up in utter shock, questioning what just happened. In response to the swift defeat of their vanguard, Kageyama rises, rallying the remaining students. He declares that the first-year alliance will defeat Kazuya, as the entire group prepares for a united assault. The declaration brings a look of pure excitement to Naruko's face. He thinks this might actually be fun. Kazuya, meanwhile, internally acknowledges the power of a kick he just blocked, admitting it was quite powerful despite taking him by surprise. He settles into a ready stance, a look of relief spreading across his features. The fight wasn't over. He hadn't had nearly enough yet. He faces the alliance with a confident smirk, asking them to please hold out longer than the third years did. In response, the blonde rival, Sasahara, declares that Kazuya's overconfidence is his greatest weakness and gives the order to attack. As the armored students charge, he assesses them as a highly agile squad, acknowledging they could present some trouble. Despite this, he remains unimpressed, concluding internally that their skill doesn't even compare to that of the third years. He meets the charge head-on, shattering the shield of the lead knight with a single, powerful punch. Watching from the sidelines, Sasahara grits his teeth in frustration, noting that even the heavily armored reinforcements are being stopped. He finds himself suddenly cornered by the armored squad, momentarily wondering aloud how they managed to surround him. In response, he slams his fist into the ground, unleashing a shockwave that stuns his assailants. Before Sasahara can react, Kazuya is suddenly in front of him. He calls the blonde rival an idiot, declaring that such meager defenses are useless against him as he strikes his opponent down. Standing over his defeated opponent, he informs him that he has just stepped into the Hell Zone. At that moment, a volley of projectiles darkens the sky, and Kazuya looks up, acknowledging the new threat of throwing weapons. With a captured sword, he deflects the entire barrage. The projectiles land harmlessly around him, leaving the other students, including Sasahara, staring in shock. They murmur in disbelief, one calling him a monster for blocking every single weapon. Watching from a distance, Shigeru expresses his disbelief that Kazuya endured the assault, calling him an idiot. Naruko retorts, telling the masked student to shut up. He then turns to Kageyama, impatiently asking when it will be his turn to join the fight. He coolly tells his subordinate to wait, that his turn will come soon. Meanwhile, Kazuya faces the armored students, recognizing their flawless teamwork. He notes that they are perfectly aware of each other and what they need to do next. This coordinated assault feels different from his past experiences. To him, it's like fighting one single, massive, nasty monster. But despite the comparison, he finds a flaw. He pivots, blocking a heavy blow from a knight in a round helmet. He shoves the knight back, breaking their formation. The warrior in the angular helmet shouts in alarm as his comrade is thrown off balance. Kazuya realizes that while their teamwork is good, their individual skills are not yet a true threat. He understands their weakness. If just one of them falls, the entire unit will naturally crumble. With this realization, he unleashes a powerful, arcing strike aimed at their legs. As another volley of projectiles rains down, Kazuya stands his ground, unimpressed. From his vantage point, Naruko watches, a bored expression on his face. For how long are you going to try the same thing? Kazuya calls out. He stands unscathed among the spent projectiles, his gaze fixed on his unseen opponents. He internally acknowledges that their teamwork is good and wonders just how long they've been practicing for this moment. The answer, however, is surprising. The details of the match were only revealed today, meaning their impressive coordination was achieved with almost no preparation time. Kageyama's voice cuts through the air, addressing Kazuya directly. Is that what you think? He asks, a confident smirk on his face. How about this? I set all this up to defeat you. In response, Kazuya readies himself for the next phase of the assault. Suddenly, Naruko appears in a blur of motion, closing the distance in an instant. He unleashes what he calls the perfect strike, aimed directly at a stunned Kazuya. He reacts with surprise, but his reflexes are faster. With a sharp clang, he brings his weapon up, blocking the high-speed strike just in time. The attacker, Naruko, had been concealed within a volley of thrown weapons. Naruko himself is stunned that his ambush failed, his eyes wide with disbelief as his attack is stopped cold. As Kageyama observes the failed tactic with a cold, "I see," the spectators cry out Kinzuya's name in alarm. Before Naruko can recover from his shock, Kinzuya retaliates, striking him down. He tells the fallen student that despite the amazing tactic, he is simply not strong enough yet. With Naruko and the other first years incapacitated on the ground, he turns his attention directly to the strategist. "So, Kageyama-kun," he calls out, his voice laced with challenge. "You're the only ones left, huh? Got any more plans for me?" The taunt hits its mark. Kageyama lets out a sharp click of his tongue, his expression hardening with frustration behind his sunglasses. As the sound of shifting armor clanks nearby, he mutters under his breath, telling the cheater boss not to get carried away. In response to the stalemate, one of the observing upperclassmen, a girl in armor with her hair in a ponytail, steps forward. "Sorry, Karen," she says. "I'm joining in." She turns to her fellow students, explaining her reasoning. If the first years alone could push him this hard, then they might stand a chance if all the second and third years join forces. In the crowded arena, a student with a ponytail asks Tanya for her thoughts. Karen, however, seems distracted, murmuring that she wants to fight fair and square. The student observes this, a look of understanding on her face as she realizes Karen's intentions. The ponytail-wearing student smiles, her admiration clear. She tells Karen that this very desire for a fair fight is what makes her so cool. In response, Karen's expression hardens as she focuses on Kinzuya. She declares that she can't afford to worry about appearances and is determined to get the secret of his skill from him, one way or another. She then confronts Kinzuya directly, asking if he's going to label her tactics as a dirty move. He looks back at her steadily and replies with a simple, "Of course not." His calm demeanor vanishes in an instant. A wide, predatory grin spreads across Kinzuya's face as he announces that things are finally getting interesting and that the warm-up is over. Karen can only stare, thinking he has absolutely no charm. The battle erupts. Kinzuya finds himself surrounded by a group of armored students, realizing there are too many to attack all at once. From the sidelines, Oda Mao watches with a worried expression. Kinzuya steels himself, deciding he has no choice but to get serious, even though Mao had warned him not to overdo it. A teacher's hand extends, shouting for the fight to stop. From the crowd, Karen screams Kinzuya's name, calling him an idiot as he stands alone against the armored squadron. Her shout fades into quiet worry. Karen clenches her fist tightly, only hoping that he doesn't get seriously hurt. In the arena, one of the knights with a rounded helmet brings his massive sword down on Kinzuya. Kinzuya reacts just in time, raising his shield to block the powerful strike. The blow is stopped, but a look of utter shock flashes across his face. He realizes with dawning horror that his special skill, the break attack, has failed to activate. As the knight's blade presses against his shield, Kageyama watches silently from the background, his expression hidden. He grunts, the shock of his failed attack registering on his face. From the sidelines, Kageyama watches the development with a cold, impassive gaze. The momentum sends him sliding across the arena floor. The armored students point and shout, determined not to let him escape their encirclement. Scrambling back to his feet, his expression hardens with renewed determination. The students press their advantage, with one noting his last hit did some damage, and another shouting for them to keep it up, confident they can overwhelm him with sheer numbers. As they swarm him, an opponent in full-plate armor brings a heavy mace down. From the audience, Shigeru observes the attack, thinking to himself that Kinzuya is letting his guard down. He dodges with surprising speed, the attack missing him by inches. As he lands, he realizes that while he can use physical enhancement, his bash skill is unavailable. This prompts a nearby student to wonder aloud why Kinzuya isn't using his skills. The reason for his failure finally clicks as he stares at his weapon. In the stands, Oda Mao explains to a worried Tanya that it's only natural. She points out that his weapon is classified as a staff, and unlike a sword or mace, he has zero proficiency with it. He comes to the same conclusion, recalling the words of the shop owner, Sugiyama. He had completely forgotten the fundamental game mechanic. Proficiency is required to use weapon-specific skills. The break attack he attempted is a sword skill, useless with a staff. With this stark realization, he looks up at the horde of opponents surrounding him. A slow, unnerving smile spreads across his face as a new path forward becomes clear. Right now, the only thing he can use is magic. His expression shifts from desperation to manic glee. He finds the situation exciting. From the crowd, Naruko senses the shift, recognizing a true pinch and eagerly yelling for him to bring on. He embraces the challenge, believing that it's in moments like these that one truly grows stronger. With a wild look in his eyes, he leaps into the air, swinging his staff down toward the swarm of armored students. He moves like a storm, his staff a blur as he weaves through the armored students. A downward strike fells one opponent while he simultaneously deflects a sword thrust from another. The sheer number of combatants is immense, and even a skilled warrior like the girl with the ponytail is forced back with a grunt. From the observation deck, the school staff watches the chaotic melee unfold. Principal Todoroki and a teacher with distinctive white glasses stare with expressions of shock and concern at the scene below. Among the other students, Karen Tanya, Oda Mao, and Kageyama Naozumi also observe the battle. Karen's gaze is fixed and intense. Oda's is sharp and critical, while Kageyama remains impassive in the background. The furious exchange ends as abruptly as it began. Kazuya stands alone, panting heavily, surrounded by the groaning, defeated bodies of his classmates. The arena floor is littered with fallen combatants. His adrenaline fades, and the toll of the battle hits him. He collapses to his knees, realizing with a grimace that his own healing can't keep up. He has defeated the last of them, but the cost is clear. Nearby, a female knight with light hair remarks in disbelief that they still couldn't take him down. He clenches his fist in frustration, noting that only Karen is left to face. But before he can dwell on it, a figure steps before him. It is the student with the ponytail, her armor glinting. She offers him a small bottle, telling him to drink it. Kazuya looks up, confused, recognizing the object as a high potion. The girl confirms his thought, explaining that if he uses it, any wound he has will heal in an instant. Her offer draws an immediate, furious reaction from the light-haired knight, who demands to know what she thinks she's doing. The knight then turns and apologizes to the other defeated students for her teammates' action. The girl with the potion pays her no mind, her gaze fixed solely on Kazuya. With cold determination, she states that there is no point in fighting him while he is weakened. Her intent becomes clear as she readies her sword and shield, an aura of power flaring around her. She declares that only by defeating him at his very best can she truly call herself the strongest in the school. Oda Mao arrives to see Karen Tanya and Kazuya Sato before the tournament. She calls out to Karen, complimenting her on her gear. Pleased by the praise, Karen asks if she really means it, happy that her friend came to watch. Later, while the three rest on a bench, Karen's cheerful demeanor fades. She confesses that she has started to lose confidence, even wondering if she possesses any real talent. Mao observes that such self-doubt is very unlike her. Karen continues, explaining that ever since meeting Kazuya, she has begun to question if what she considered effort was truly effort at all. However, she admits that the experience has also served as a powerful reminder of how important it is to keep trying, no matter what. After listening thoughtfully, Mao reveals a gift she bought with her own saved money, a high potion. She presents it to Karen, who is stunned by the gesture, exclaiming that the item is incredibly expensive. Mao explains that since the tournament rules change every year, she doesn't know what to expect. She tells Karen that she wants her to fight Kazuya with everything she has, but leaves the decision of how and when to use the potion entirely up to her. With a confident smile, she adds that she is sure Karen would do the same for her. Holding the potion, Karen looks down, her expression shifting to one of quiet determination. Their moment is interrupted when Mao suddenly remembers the time, shouting that the opening ceremony is about to begin. Startled, Karen realizes they need to hurry. As they depart, Kazuya remains behind for a moment, his hand tightening on the hilt of his weapon. He thinks to himself that even without a gift like that, he is resolved to win. From a short distance, Oda Mao watches him, her expression hardening as she senses his intense focus. Suddenly, Kazuya confronts Mao, taking the high potion from her. Before she can react, he drinks it all, declaring himself fully recovered. With a defiant look, he tells a stunned Mao that she is going to regret her actions. He faces his opponent as Karen, fueled by righteous fury, charges toward him. With a determined cry, she shouts that she is not going to lose. A confident smirk plays on his lips as he watches her approach. He swings his heavy, club-like weapon to meet her charge head-on. Instead of meeting his weapon with her own, Karen intercepts the powerful blow with her armored gauntlet. She grits her teeth against the force of the impact. She looks up, startled by the strength behind his attack. Kazuya acknowledges her resilience, remarking with a grin that a single blow isn't enough to take her down. Her surprise hardens into defiance. Of course not, she retorts, deftly parrying his follow-up strike with her sword. The duel intensifies into a rapid exchange of attacks and parries. Karen's sword flashes against Kazuya's heavy club as each combatant relentlessly tests the other's defenses. They move across the training floor, a blur of motion and clashing weapons. Neither is able to gain a clear advantage as they continue to trade powerful blows. As their fierce battle rages on, it draws the attention of an observer. Shigeru, his face partially covered by his mask, watches the exchange with quiet intensity. His eyes narrow, analyzing every move as the two combatants continue their relentless assault, seemingly on the verge of action himself. Just as he seems poised to intervene, a voice cuts in. Oda Mao appears, her expression grim. "Stay out of this," she commands. In the distance, both Kazuya and Karen lie on the floor, the duel having reached a sudden, mutual conclusion. The duel between Kazuya and Karen Tanya reaches a fever pitch. Their weapons are locked in a stalemate, with Kazuya bearing a fierce, competitive grin. Karen, clad in plate armor with her hair tied back in a practical ponytail for the fight, meets his intensity with her own, declaring that no outside interference is allowed. The deadlock shatters as Karen swings her heavy, club-like sword. Instead of meeting the blow head-on, Kazuya pivots with sharp focus, redirecting his own weapon to strike the shield on her arm. The targeted blow lands with a sharp crack, causing her to cry out as her defense is compromised. The force of the impact reverberates through her, forcing a sharp cough from her lips. She stumbles back, her stance broken as Kazuya presses his advantage, leaving her struggling to recover from the jarring blow to her shield. He pauses, looking down at her with a flicker of admiration. He hadn't thought she would be so persistent. But the moment passes, his expression hardening as he grips his weapon. The time for games is over. From the floor, Karen glares up, exhausted, but her spirit unbroken. With a final, cold declaration of game over, Kazuya raises his weapon high for a finishing blow. On her knees and defenseless, Karen can only watch in shock as the decisive strike descends upon her. In a wide training hall, a sparring match is underway. Kazuya, holding a large practice club, faces a girl in full plate armor. With intense focus, she repeatedly urges him to move, pressing her attack and forcing him onto the defensive. Her sword crashes against his weapon, creating a brilliant flash of impact that radiates outward with concussive force. Staggering back from the blow, Kazuya looks up to find that his opponent has vanished. He glances around in confusion, wondering where she could have gone. His shock turns to disbelief as he spots her high in the air. She has performed a jump of impossible height, something no ordinary human could do, and now descends upon him, sword poised to strike. With a powerful downward slash, her blade smashes into Kazuya's club, which he raises just in time to block the devastating blow. As the armored girl lands, panting heavily from the exertion, the observers, Mr. Ujihara and Principal Todoroki, watch intently. Ujihara calmly identifies the phenomenon, stating that it is most likely a physical ability increase. Standing before his towering opponent, Kazuya comes to a sudden realization. She must have acquired a new skill. A grin spreads across his face. He finds it awesome that she has grown stronger right in the middle of their fight, even as she continues her fierce assault. He braces himself, blocking another powerful strike. He confirms his theory internally. Her attacks are definitely more powerful now. However, as he analyzes her ragged breathing, he deduces the full picture. If he had to guess, she hasn't even realized she's obtained a new skill. Worse for her, her stamina can't keep up with the power output, leaving her vulnerable. He watched her struggle, a thought crystallizing in his mind. If possible, he wanted to draw out her full potential. The armored girl, panting, steadied her grip on her sword, her face a mask of pained determination. She lunged with a strained cry, but the attack was weak, and she stumbled back, exhausted. From the sidelines, Tanya watched with annoyance, wondering what was happening. Kazuya, however, seemed to confirm his suspicions, thinking to himself that this must be the limit of her current abilities. Seeing her on one knee, he spoke with a cold, dismissive tone. He told her that her big sister wasn't much to speak of, either. The insult struck a deep nerve. Her eyes narrowed, instantly filling with a burning, sharp-edged fury. He continued his verbal assault, remarking on the 3 years she had spent trying to obtain skills. While onlookers like Shigeru and another student thought he was just stating the limits of her abilities, Kazuya internally scoffed, considering her efforts a complete waste of time. His derision shattered her composure. Trembling with rage, she glared up at him, questioning how he dared to speak of that power. The surrounding students gasped at the sudden, violent shift in her demeanor. A confident smirk spread across Kazuya's face. He was certain his taunts would work. From a viewing platform, Mr. Ujihara's eyes widened slightly, sensing the change Kazuya had deliberately provoked. His mockery of her sister and everyone else ignited a firestorm within her. With a furious roar, she launched herself forward, becoming a blur of motion that stunned the onlookers with its impossible speed. She crossed the distance in an instant, her sword raised high. Kazuya's smirk vanished, replaced by wide-eyed shock as he realized with dawning horror that he would not be able to dodge in time. With a final, hate-filled scream for him to get lost and die, she brought her sword down in a devastating arc, the air itself seeming to crack around the force of the blow. He reacts just in time, his arm shooting up to block the attack as his hand clenches into a fist. Though he successfully parries the blow, he internally admits that he would have been in serious trouble if he hadn't been able to defend against that sudden burst of speed. His initial surprise melts away, replaced by a sharp, confident grin. The immense power his opponent wields doesn't frighten him, it invigorates him. This, he realizes, is what makes for a real match. The sentiment is shared. The armored girl lets out a furious roar, her face a mask of determination. With a shout of his own, Kazuya meets her intensity. It has become a battle to decide, once and for all, who is the stronger of the two. In the next instant, they collide. She brings her sword down in a devastating overhead arc, but Kazuya meets the steel blade with nothing but his bare forearm. The impact is cataclysmic, shattering the arena floor and sending shockwaves and fragments of stone erupting from the point of contact. The final clash of the tournament erupts in a devastating explosion of force, shattering the arena floor. At the epicenter, Kazuya and the armored girl are thrown apart by the impact of his decisive blow. The armored girl realizes she has never encountered an opponent who made her feel so frustrated. No matter how hard she chased him, She couldn't catch him, causing her to panic. She grits her teeth, lamenting that she still doesn't have enough power. He stands panting, his gaze fixed on the ground. He thinks about his determination to win, then quietly retracts something he had said previously, his thoughts drifting to Tanya. His victory is absolute. The armored girl lies defeated on the cracked arena floor, acknowledging his strength and conceding the win. In the stands, the announcer and a teacher express their shock that the match has already concluded. An official voice cuts through the stunned silence, declaring Satu Kinzuya the winner of the competition. The announcement is immediately met with outrage from the crowd. Spectators shout that he made a mess of the tournament, calling him a cheater and demanding he never return to the school. He looks up at the hostile faces, thinking to himself that this reaction is about what he expected. He internally admits that he really doesn't like school. From behind, the visor-wearing instructor watches him silently. As he endures the crowd's scorn, his classmates sit in the now emptying stands. Naruko notes that it's over, while Shigeru observes that their upperclassmen and the rest of the audience have all left. He then turns to the round helmet knight, pointing out that he fainted and only woke up after it was all over. Nearby, the round helmet knight finds the armored girl, who apologizes with tears in her eyes. He asks how long she plans to keep her helmet on, but she deflects. He reassures her, telling her she is quite strong herself and should have some confidence. She looks out at the empty arena, admitting that the fight was surprisingly refreshing. Their moment of reflection concludes as Naruko, Shigeru, and the round helmet knight stand together, looking out over the deserted battlefield. United in their experience, they resolve that they will all become stronger. Sometime later, Kinzuya meets with Mr. Ujihara, who comments on his victory. He hands Kinzuya a document, explaining that it lists all the skills he has acquired through his understanding of proficiency. Despite this, Kinzuya asks how he can become even stronger, stating his desire to learn more skills. Just then, Shigeru appears, calling out his name. He is suddenly confronted by Oda Mao, who grabs his head and demands to know why he is there. She declares she came to complain about his treatment of Tanya. Confused for a moment, Kinzuya then mutters that he was the one who beat her up so badly, calling himself an idiot. Oda Mao presses on, asking how he could have been so merciless in that situation. Kinzuya, however, looks her in the eye and thanks her, explaining that not giving it his all would have been rude. As Oda Mao reels in shock, Shigeru calmly interjects, stating that Karen is not a girl who would break so easily. Changing the subject, Shigeru asks Kinzuya what he was discussing with the appraiser. Kinzuya explains he wanted Mr. Ujihara to look at his skill sheet directly. He presents the document, showing that despite having trained to increase his proficiency with swords, staves, guns, and maces, he has not been able to acquire the skills he needs. He continues his explanation, voicing his theory that perhaps there was a specific action he needed to perform to unlock a new skill or something similar. Before he can finish, Mr. Ujihara interrupts, confirming that Kinzuya's idea is not necessarily wrong. He uses Tanya as an example, revealing that she obtained her new skill only after he had berated her. He elaborates that the Appraisal Association is currently investigating the matter, though they haven't announced it publicly. It appears there are specific rules governing how skills are obtained, as illustrated by a vision of two armored warriors clashing fiercely. Mr. Ujihara theorizes that the rapid advancement of modern weapon technology in the past century may have caused this knowledge to be lost, as there are no surviving documents that mention these rules. He then addresses Kinzuya directly, acknowledging that much of what the boy knows about skills is beyond their current understanding. Mr. Ujihara makes an offer. The association will reward Kinzuya handsomely if he is willing to share his information with them. Kinzuya's expression hardens with determination. He declares that he is thinking of going to a dungeon and demands that Mr. Ujihara tell him everything he knows about them. Intrigued, Mr. Ujihara asks which dungeon he has in mind, while Shigeru looks on in shock. The appraiser readily agrees, promising to gladly tell Kinzuya all that he knows. He explained to Mr. Ujihara that there was a specific place he wanted to visit, but his research had only yielded a name. With Shigeru looking on with a concerned expression, Kinzuya asked where this location could be found. The name he uttered was the Fuji Sea of Trees, a vast and foreboding forest dominated by a massive, unnatural crater. Mr. Ujihara confirmed the location's deadly reputation, explaining that countless adventurers had perished there while aiming for sacred Mount Fuji, making it a place few dared to challenge anymore. As Oda Mao listened, Kinzuya cheerfully ignored the warning, declaring they would go the next day, since a bus was conveniently heading there from a guild. He then turned to Oda Mao, seeking her agreement. Her response was an immediate and furious refusal. She yelled that no number of lives would be enough to convince her to enter such a deadly place. Kinzuya, however, remained unfazed, calmly acknowledging the danger while reassuring her not to worry. He then reminded her that they possessed a secret weapon, a statement that left Oda Mao looking utterly perplexed. She questioned what he was talking about, as Mr. Ujihara observed with a knowing look. In response, Kinzuya presented a smooth, dark, oval-shaped gem, declaring it to be a return stone. He confidently explained that this item guaranteed their safe return. Seeing the stone, Oda Mao's tension visibly eased, and she finally agreed to the plan, much to Kinzuya's satisfaction. At the guild headquarters, the receptionist Harumi burst through a doorway, excitedly announcing that Master Sato-kun has won. She turns back to her desk, a slight blush on her cheeks as she recalls the event. She muses to herself that he, her master, managed to crush the older students despite only being a first year. Her gaze then falls upon a document on her desk, an application for a pass to the Fuji Sea of Trees. Realizing he must have slipped away again, she lets out an exasperated sigh. The scene shifts to a vast, desolate landscape dominated by a massive volcano, the very destination Kazuya is heading towards, prompting the silent question of his motives. On a bus, Kazuya is jolted awake by his companion, the man with slick-back hair, who announces their arrival. Still groggy, Kazuya looks around as Oda Mao remarks with mild irritation that she's never seen someone fall asleep on the way to a dungeon before. He peers out the window at the imposing volcano, realizing that the real-life dungeon entrance looks a little different from how he remembers in the game. Stepping off the bus, still dazed but buzzing with excitement, Kazuya immediately collides with a massive, armored form of Sugiyama. A nearby sign warns of monster activity in the Fuji Sea of Trees dungeon. The towering figure turns, annoyed, telling the brat he's in the way. The slicked-hair man quickly apologizes, urging Kazuya not to space out in the middle of the path. The Fuji Sea of Trees is one of the most difficult dungeons, a place where the minerals from volcanic explosions and the mana emitted by monsters render compasses and smartphones useless. Another heavily armored adventurer observes the tense crowd, noting that everyone is on edge because they are risking their lives. Sensing the tension, Kazuya asks Oda Mao if she is also scared. She confirms that it's a place everyone is scared to enter, then reveals she has procured a cart for them. Kazuya looks on, amazed at her foresight. He is eager to enter the dungeon, but Oda Mao's serious expression stops him. She admits she isn't a skilled fighter, but reminds him they are a party and came together. As Kazuya urges them to hurry, she holds him back, stating they aren't ready yet. Before they can proceed, a cheerful merchant calls out from a stall emblazoned with the characters "For Weapons Shop." He announces that he has brought a selection of excellent weapons for them all. Kazuya and his companions turn, surprised by the interruption. The man explains that this expedition is sponsored by a firearms manufacturer and urges the adventurers to purchase some of their latest models before entering the mountain. He gestures dramatically towards his crown jewel, the massive barrel of a cannon, promising it will increase their likelihood of survival and make collecting monster materials an easy task. The full weapon is revealed to be a heavy armored anti-magic beast interceptor tank, which the merchant proudly calls the Dragonaut. He boasts that its massive main cannon, forged from the finest mana and monster materials, can pierce any scale or shell and is even powered by a dragon blood engine. The slick-hair man lets out an impressed whoa. The merchant adds that they have recently improved its fuel efficiency by refining the process of burning monster blood and parts in its energy furnace. He continues his pitch, explaining that the Dragonaut also comes with anti-magic shields capable of blocking almost any attack. For a limited time, he offers it to the brave adventurers at a very good price. Oda Mao turns to Kazuya, asking if he can afford such a purchase. With a grimace, Kazuya immediately declares there is no way he is buying it. As another adventurer in full-plate armor purchases a handgun, Kazuya reflects on the prevalence of firearms. He now understands why the monster materials they turn in are often in poor condition. Despite firearms proficiency skills being limited and not very versatile, all the other adventurers seem to use them. He realizes it can't be helped. Everyone is scared. As he processes this, Oda Mao looks on with a critical expression, questioning why everyone relies on such weapons so heavily. He listened as Oda Mao continued her thought, explaining that unlike him, the other adventurers are not inherently strong. They're simply trying to improve their chances of survival in any way they can, no matter how small the advantage. Her words brought back a memory of his tournament fight, the feeling of battling an opponent with all his might. To him, that approach seemed far better. He voiced this sentiment, asking her if it wasn't natural for everyone to want to get stronger. Oda Mao met his gaze, her expression serious, as she replied that the desire for strength isn't something one can force upon others. Before she could continue, a panicked shout cut through the air. A monster had suddenly appeared before another group of adventurers. Both Kazuya and Oda Mao whipped their heads around, their conversation instantly forgotten. The creature was a horrifying sight, a tall skeletal figure with a bird-like skull for a head, brandishing a massive scythe. The nearby adventurers froze in terror, one of them stammering in disbelief at the thing before them. In an instant, the monster lunged, closing the distance in a terrifying blur of speed. Its movement was so fast it seemed to vanish, causing the weapons merchant to cry out in confusion. But Kazuya saw the truth, shouting that it was right in front of them and yelling for the Dragonaut to intercept it. At the command, the merchant roared for the tank to fire. A volley of heavy rounds erupted from the cannon, streaking towards the monster as the merchant laughed, boasting about his superior firepower. The barrage struck true, creating a massive explosion. The merchant smugly declared the creature powerless, but his face fell as the smoke cleared. The monster stood completely unscathed, having taken the full attack without injury. The merchant stared, aghast, its multiple eyes glowing within its skull. The reaper-like creature retaliated, It leaped forward, bringing its scythe down in a powerful arc, striking the Dragonaut tank with devastating force. The creature brought its massive scythe down, cleaving through the Dragonaut tank's armor with a deafening shriek of metal. Amidst the chaos, adventurers scrambled for their lives, their cries to run away echoing in the air as the monster's skull-like head loomed over the wreckage. As the monster continued its rampage in the background, Oda Mao grabbed Kazuya, shouting his name and insisting they had to get out of there immediately. The fully armored knight also fell back from the overwhelming threat, but he didn't move. Kazuya's gaze remained locked on the skull-faced creature, his expression one of intense focus. The monster, in turn, seemed to pause its assault, its empty eye sockets fixed on him. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the creature vanished. Ota Mao stared at the empty space, remarking that it had disappeared. Kazuya explained that he didn't sense any ill will from it, believing it had simply accomplished its goal and left. When Oda Mao asked how he could possibly know that, he could only reply that he just did, somehow. Before they could ponder the mystery further, a new, imposing figure emerged from the woods. A towering, goat-headed demon with massive horns and clawed hands stood before them. Kazuya identified it as a Baphomet, likely the area's boss monster. He looked up at the creature, a wide, eager grin spreading across his face. "Now I'm all excited," he declared. Oda Mao looked at him in disbelief, expressing her hope that she was wrong about his intentions. His excitement was genuine. He turned to Oda Mao, suggesting they go clear the Fuji Sea of trees. She immediately rejected the idea, shouting that there was no way they could possibly fight that thing. Her protest was cut short as she turned, realizing with a jolt of frustration that the bus they were meant to take had already departed, leaving them stranded. With a groan of frustration, she turned back to Kazuya. He, however, remained unfazed, reassuring her that it was fine. He held up a small, glowing orb, explaining they had a return stone and could use it if things got hairy. He confidently told her she could trust him as they began walking toward the forest entrance. Still hesitant, she made him promise they would leave the very moment it became dangerous. He leaps into action as the Baphomet lunges, its monstrous form a blur of dark energy. As the battle begins, Oda Mao's voice cuts through the chaos, her distrust for him ringing out loud and clear. She doesn't trust him one bit. Deep within the dungeon, Kazuya confirms his suspicions. He holds a modern smartphone and a traditional compass, but neither functions. The phone screen is blank, and the compass needle spins uselessly. It was true, technology and normal navigation were useless here. His companion, Oda Mao, is losing patience. She points out they've been walking for an hour and wants to go home. Kazuya, however, refuses, stating he doesn't want to leave after just wandering around. His frustration causes Oda Mao to panic, hushing him and warning that he'll scare the monsters away, exclaiming that they're done for. He turns to her, his expression serious. He asks about the monster they encountered earlier, specifically questioning if she meant the one called Baphomet. She recalls the goat-headed creature, confirming she's never heard of a monster like that before. A grim possibility occurs to her. Perhaps it killed everyone who saw it before they could ever report its existence. She lets out an exasperated sigh, her patience wearing thin. She demands to know how Kazuya could possibly know its name. He quickly fabricates a lie, claiming he saw something similar in a book once. Unconvinced, she presses him further, her gaze sharp. She asks him directly why he is so determined to clear this particular dungeon. He hesitates, his eyes narrowing. Internally, he knows the truth is impossible to share. His knowledge comes directly from the video game he played in his past life. With a sigh of resignation, Oda Mao stamps her foot and says whatever. Kazuya watches her, realizing that telling her he was reincarnated would only make her think he was completely crazy. He understands her frustration and offers a compromise. He suggests they continue walking for just one more hour, promising they will go home if nothing happens by then. Oda Mao simply replies, "Got it." As they proceed through the dungeon's forested path, Kazuya voices a growing concern. He asks Oda Mao what's going on, pointing out the strange fact that they haven't encountered a single monster. He suggests to Oda Mao that perhaps they should return to town. She seems to consider it, acknowledging that she'd appreciate continuing, but is cut off as a sudden cold sensation washes over her. The source of her unease reveals itself in an instant. A massive, draconic serpent erupts from the shadows ahead. Reacting immediately, Kazuya shoves Oda Mao, yelling for her to get behind him. He recognizes the creature instantly, his voice sharp with urgency as he identifies it as a poison snake. He warns that it's venomous and they need to get away immediately. As she starts to protest, she finds her arm held fast by Kazuya's grip, preventing her from moving forward. His gaze remains locked on the monster as he shouts a single, sharp command, "Now." With a firm push, he shoves Oda Mao further back, putting himself squarely between her and the looming threat. She looks on, startled by his decisive action. Now standing alone before the creature, Kazuya grips his weapon. He observes the snake's posture, realizing it is wary of him, a behavior he expects from a dungeon monster. His observation is cut short as the serpent suddenly lunges forward. He braces himself, questioning if the attack is truly aimed at him. In a flash of movement from his periphery, the truth becomes horrifyingly clear. A second snake strikes from the side, revealing the one in front was merely a distraction. He realizes his mistake too late. He was careless. The fangs of a second snake sink deep into his forearm. His eyes widen in shock and pain, understanding the gravity of his miscalculation. He struggles against the poisoned snake, its massive body coiled tightly around his arm where its fangs had sunk in. The beast's grip is immense, pinning him in place as he desperately tries to fight back. As he grapples with the creature, he realizes its forked tongue has locked onto him, anchoring it further. His physical attacks are ineffective, sinking into its soft, yielding flesh without doing real damage. He understands with dread that at this rate, the monster will simply cling to him until he collapses from the venom. The venom courses through his veins, a wave of nausea and pain washing over him. Panic sets in. He knows he has to get away, but his body is already betraying him. His strength begins to rapidly drain away, the poison taking its toll. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of light erupts as something impacts the snake's head with concussive force. The light was a gunshot. Oda Mao has arrived, her weapon aimed squarely at the beast. The snake recoils from the blast as Kazuya, stunned by her sudden appearance, calls out her name. The monster shrieks in pain from the powerful shot. Seeing an opportunity, Kazuya urgently screams for Oda Mao to run and save herself. She ignores his plea, planting her feet and unleashing another deafening blast into the creature's side. The exertion and the spreading poison become too much. Kazuya stumbles to his knees, clutching his arm as he groans in agony. Just as Oda Mao prepares her next move, her body freezes. She cries out, realizing she is completely unable to move as the second poison snake emerges behind her. As he watches her predicament, a terrible realization dawns on Kazuya. His mind raced, recalling the moment he acquired the staff. Oda Mao had questioned his rare choice of weapon, but he knew it was necessary. He needed a skill perfect for a melee fighter like himself, something more than just another blade. The realization that had struck him moments before now crystallized. He needed a way to attack from a distance. A magic skill. As he focused his intent, dark energy began to swirl around the head of the staff. With a surge of desperate power, he roared the incantation, Fire Arrow. A bolt of pure, fiery energy erupted from the weapon, streaking through the air. The arrow found its mark, detonating in a blinding flash. The poison snake that had paralyzed Oda Mao was obliterated, its threat neutralized instantly. She remained motionless on the ground, a silent witness. Kazuya stared at the staff, still crackling with power, a look of sheer disbelief on his face. Awesome, he breathed, stunned by the force he had just unleashed. His reverie was shattered by Oda Mao's voice calling his name. He looked down, the awe on his face replaced by a grim understanding. So this was the power of magic. The combination of magical exertion and the spreading poison proved too much. Kazuya collapsed. From the ground, Oda frantically yelled for him to stay with her. He managed to reassure her, explaining that the poison hadn't yet reached his vital organs. She urged him to hurry and use his healing ability. He agreed, but his gaze swept their surroundings with a new sense of dread. I will, he promised. But let's get out of here first. Oda could only look back, confused by his sudden urgency. His fear was justified. As he spoke, the shadows around them deepened and coalesced, revealing the menacing silhouettes of countless other monsters emerging from the gloom, silently surrounding them. He struggled to focus, his body racked with poison, and realized the horrifying truth of their situation. They were not just surrounded by a few monsters. They had stumbled into what seemed to be a poison snake nest. At his grim realization, Oda Mao's eyes widened in sheer terror, her mind refusing to accept the reality. No way, she whispered. Kazuya, sweating and barely conscious, could only question how they had fallen into such a hopeless predicament. Deep within a cavern, Oda Mao and Kazuya find their path blocked by a pair of massive poison snakes. Mao confirms that they have stumbled into a nest, the path ahead likely crawling with more. She clutches a glowing return stone, but explains they cannot use it, as the item requires absolute focus, an impossible luxury in their current predicament. As one of the beasts looms over them, its eyes gleaming with malice, she knows that a moment's hesitation means death. Kazuya, clutching a fresh bite mark on his arm, reports that his magic is still on cooldown from their previous fight, and, more critically, his heal spell seems to have no effect on the serpent's poison. He gasps for breath as the poison rapidly spreads, leaving him completely immobilized. Seeing him struggle, Oda Mao desperately urges him to stop trying to speak and conserve his strength. With Kazuya fading, her expression hardens into one of grim resolve. There is only one option. She must get him to an antidote located at the base of the mountain. Now carrying the dead weight of her companion on her back, she pushes through the dense undergrowth. A flicker of doubt crosses her mind as she questions if she truly has what it takes to accomplish this. Her thoughts drift to the past, to a time when she failed. The memory is sharp and painful. She couldn't save anyone. The image of a city skyline with a tall church steeple is burned into her mind. The scene shifts to her school life, where a cheerful classmate rushes up to her, exclaiming, "Mao, congratulations!" The girl shows her a news article on her phone announcing that Oda Mao took gold in the dismantling division at the prefectural tournament. In the background, other students observe, commenting on how she acts like it's no big deal. The praise continues as she stands uncomfortably. She's reminded that she's the top of her class and that she survived Spartan training from her adventure parents ever since she was a child. This reputation was hard-earned. She is known to work harder than anyone, shown both studying tirelessly at her desk and as a crack shot with a rifle on the practice range. Flustered, Oda Mao tries to deflect the compliments, insisting that she is terrible at actual combat. Her classmates are taken aback, remarking that it's honestly weird for an elite like her to even be attending their school. Her mind drifts back to her school days, a memory of her younger self smiling with earnest confidence. She had made a promise, declaring with youthful bravado that she would be the one to protect her friends. This promise was made to her two classmates. She enthusiastically grabbed her light-haired male friend by the arm, suggesting to him and her dark-haired female friend that they should form an adventuring party. Her male friend, caught off guard by her fervor, looked at her with a faint blush, touched by the idea. He quietly agreed that they would, one day. Following that hopeful conversation, she and her female friend walked home together through an alleyway, their arms linked in companionship, the boy's quiet affirmation hanging in the air. The memory sours. She had believed she had such reliable friends, that her life as an adventurer would be perfectly ordinary. But then, reality struck. A foot clad in heavy armor stomps into the dirt, marking a violent shift from idyllic school days to the harshness of combat. The scene plunges into terror. A monstrous, bear-like creature, a red grizzly, towers over a younger, armored Oda Mao. Frozen with fear, she can only stare up at the snarling beast, her own words a useless whisper against the overwhelming dread. In the critical moment, a flash of steel cuts through the air. A different adventurer, a woman with long, light hair, leaps in. With a determined expression, she slashes at the grizzly, vowing to get the terrified Oda Mao out of there. The savior's blade finds its mark. The red grizzly lets out a deafening roar of pain and fury as the attack connects. The memory concludes with the grim aftermath. During their practical exam, Oda Mao's class was wiped out by the red grizzly. She was the only survivor, saved only by the chance arrival of the other adventurer, who now stands over the trembling girl. Kneeling on the ground, weeping, Oda Mao is confronted by her savior. The woman points out that Oda Mao never even drew her blade. Looking at the fallen monster, the adventurer states coldly that the girl was lucky. If she had drawn her sword, she would now be dead. Her past continued to unfold in her memory. After the traumatic incident, she was approached by another adventurer, a girl with a warm smile who asked if she wanted to join her party. With a welcoming expression, the girl introduced herself as Tanaga Aaron, expressing her gladness to have Mao with them. This marked a new beginning. As they shook hands, Mao resolved that since that day, she could never forgive herself for her own helplessness. Driven by this resolve, she threw herself into battle, fighting one monster after another. However, she relegated herself to a support role, providing covering fire from the rear, believing it was the absolute best she could do. The memory of her own desperate desire for strength echoes in the present as she looks at Kazuya. Her voice rings out, a challenging question. Don't you want to get stronger? The question hangs in the air, a reflection of her own past resolve now directed at him. Her eyes narrow with fierce determination, the past fueling her present actions. With that fire in her eyes, she turns her attention back to the immediate threat. Facing the massive poison snake alongside Kazuya, she calls out his name and firmly tells him to leave the rest to her. He can only watch, startled, as she agrees to take the lead. Without hesitation, she aims her large weapon not at the creature, but the ground directly in front of it and fires. The impact sends a powerful shockwave across the cavern floor, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and debris. The dust cloud billows upwards, completely enveloping the poisoned snake and blocking its line of sight. As the monster is momentarily blinded, Kazuya understands her tactic. It will only buy them a few seconds. Through the swirling dust, Oda Mao's urgent voice calls his name, a signal to act. He was momentarily stunned as Oda Mao, already straining against a heavy cart, yelled for him to get on. Her command was urgent, cutting through the chaos. He scrambled aboard, and she immediately dug her heels in, pulling the cart forward with incredible force. A massive cloud of dust erupted behind them, obscuring their escape. Within the swirling cloud, his initial shock hardened into fierce resolve. He gripped the cart's railing and shouted a promise to them both. They were making it back alive. His words struck Oda Mao with the force of a physical blow. A fire ignited in her eyes as she strained forward, a powerful realization dawning on her. This unwavering will, this declaration to fight for life, it was the very strength she had been searching for. He glanced back, his determined expression softening into a confident grin. Seeing the change in her, he asked if she had a problem with his plan. As the disoriented poison snake remained lost in the dust cloud behind them, her reply came, low and certain. She had no problem with it. Not at all. In a quiet forest clearing, two deer-like creatures, one large and one small, drink peacefully from a stream near a small waterfall. The tranquility is shattered as a massive, dark object plummets from the sky. The larger deer cries out in alarm, and birds take flight as the object casts a great shadow over the trees. The object is the monster dismantling cart, with Kazuya and Oda Mao inside, screaming as they hurtle uncontrollably toward the ground. The startled deer scatter in panic. After the crash, Oda Mao is on her hands and knees, panting heavily. Kazuya, standing nearby, remarks that he had no idea they could move so fast. She retorts that it wasn't moving, just falling, as he asks if she is okay. She confirms that she is, explaining that she learned the new skill Cure during their fall and used it to fix herself up. A system notification confirms the acquisition of the skill, which removes status ailments. Kazuya expresses his relief that she's alive and thanks her, suggesting they use a return stone to go home. Oda Mao presents the stone, but Kazuya's expression hardens, and he clenches his fist, flatly refusing. Shocked, Oda Mao calls him unbelievable and angrily reminds him that she is the party leader and he must listen to her. She brings up their deal to bail if things got dangerous. Kazuya tries to speak, but she cuts him off, clarifying that's not what she meant before admitting he was incredibly cool during the escape. Kazuya, now holding a large, club-like weapon, dismisses his actions as a strategic retreat. He declares his desire to fight like her and states his intention to practice his magic a little longer. Oda Mao, surprised, remembers he had mentioned wanting to do that. He focuses, channeling dark energy into the weapon, noting how difficult it is to control. Watching him, Oda Mao thinks to herself that seeing him use magic like this doesn't even surprise her anymore. She continues her thought, acknowledging that for someone like him, such rapid growth is simply par for the course as he struggles to master the new application of his power. He poured his focus into the weapon, causing magical energy to flare violently. Watching him, Oda Mao felt a pang of jealousy at his intense effort. She realized that simply observing would be an insult to his dedication. The feeling ignited a new resolve within her. She felt that she could do it too. That was precisely why Kazuya thought to himself. He needed to push himself just a bit harder, channeling the chaotic energy. Seeing her change of heart, Kazuya paused. Oda Mao approached, stating she would stick around a little longer, but on one condition. Kazuya, surprised, could hardly believe it. They stood face to face. Oda Mao declared her own desire to get stronger, so that next time, she wouldn't have to run away. Kazuya met her gaze, affirming that he wanted the strength to protect his team. His hand tightened on the hilt of his weapon. He resolved then and there that he would find that strength right here, in this very dungeon. In response, Oda Mao drew her own blade, her expression firm. She would find her own way of fighting. A confident smile spread across Kazuya's face. He knew asking her to join his party had been the right choice. Suddenly, a creature erupted from the ground nearby. A balloon flower, a monster that mimics flora to ambush its prey. Oda Mao gasped in surprise, but Kazuya seized the opportunity, telling her to get started and help him with his magic training. With a predatory grin, Kazuya explained that the monster's rubbery flower was resistant to physical attacks, making it the perfect target for magic practice. He warned her to stay on lookout, as its roots likely spread throughout the area. Oda Mao, readying herself, asked what he needed her to do. As she listened to his plan, her expression grew serious. She began to add a strategic thought of her own. She inspects the expensive knife Kazuya provided, a look of mild exasperation on her face. He notes her dismantling skills, remarking that he hasn't seen them in a while. She sighs, commenting that he never lets up, but her grip on the new blade is firm, ready for the task ahead. As they face the monstrous balloon flower, her focus sharpens. She declares with professional intensity that she will skin and dice the creature perfectly, ensuring every piece fetches the highest possible market price. The monster lets out a gurgling cry in response. He flashes a confident smile, shouting that he is counting on her. Behind him, Oda Mao is already a blur of motion, beginning her assault. In that instant, a massive magical explosion erupts from Kazuya's position, engulfing the balloon flower in a torrent of destructive energy. The spell originates from him, his body twisting as he unleashes the powerful attack. His eyes remain fixed on the target. He leaps through the air, launching another concussive blast of magic that slams directly into the monster's core, sending shockwaves outward. While he handles the main target, she moves with swift precision. Her new knife flashes as she expertly dispatches and dismantles smaller creatures drawn to the commotion. With the immediate threats neutralized, they share a look of mutual understanding and successful teamwork, their expressions focused and determined. Kazuya shouts in triumph, realizing he managed to cast 5 fire arrows at once and feeling his level is definitely increasing. Nearby, Oda Mao announces she has also finished dismantling her targets. They stand over a container filled with perfectly processed monster parts. Kazuya praises her clean work, and she admits that the sharpness of the knife he provided is truly incredible. He agreed with Oda Mao's assessment. She declared they had hunted enough of the same creatures and now felt an itch to try dismantling other types of monsters. Her eagerness was slightly unsettling to him, but he conceded that it was time to find a new target. Her attention was then drawn to the sky, where a large, woolly creature drifted lazily. She pointed it out, suggesting it as their next quarry. The creature resembled a massive, horned sheep, its fleece like a puffy cloud. It floated gently above the trees, accompanied by a tiny lamb of the same species. Kazuya immediately considered his strategy, realizing that his usual fire arrow spell would only enrage the beast and send it into a berserk fury. He therefore explained to Oda Mao his intention to use a different and proven spell to defeat the creature, hoping to avoid provoking its rage. Her response was immediate and absolute. Staring at the smaller, adorable version of a monster, she flatly denied his request, declaring it was too cute. Kazuya could only react with stunned surprise. With her dagger at the ready, Oda Mao faces down a fluffy, sheep-like monster. The creature, which she calls Roryu, paws the ground, preparing to charge as she braces for impact. As the monster lunges, Kazuya urgently shouts her name, warning her to keep her eyes on it and not look away. Her gaze narrows, her focus absolute. Heeding his words, she watches the creature intently. Kazuya instructs her to observe its legs as it jumps. As a monster leaps, he identifies its lead leg, shouting left to guide her. A wide, triumphant smile spreads across her face as she exclaims, "I did it." Kazuya and another adventurer, Eren Tanagawa, congratulate her. He explains that the monster's attack patterns are fixed based on its stance, which is how he predicted its move. Mao marvels that it's the first time she's ever beaten one without a gun. She turns to Kazuya, admitting she couldn't have succeeded without his advice. He praises her for holding her ground perfectly. With a slight smile, she calls him a walking encyclopedia. Kazuya now holds the small, defeated creature. He then proposes an unexpected idea, taming the monster. Oda Mao reacts with disbelief, asking if he's serious. Kazuya explains that feeding it its favorite food gives them a good chance of success. He produces a balloon flower root, and the revived monster, now looking adorable, eagerly accepts it. Oda Mao is charmed, while Kazuya is surprised that such practical dungeon knowledge isn't common or taught in schools. Overcome with emotion, she suddenly pulls the small creature into a tight hug, thanking Kazuya for everything. Startled, he asks what's brought this on. She begins to confess a painful memory from her time at adventurer school, explaining that she was useless in a fight and a friend was killed during a mock exam while others tried to protect her. She continues, her face shadowed by the memory, revealing that she was the only one who survived. This tragedy occurred when she was in a party with Eren Tanagawa. The name strikes Kazuya. He realizes with a shock that Eren is Karen Tanya's older sister. He listened as Oda Mao's story unfolded, taking her back to a time with Eren. In a memory, Eren fights a monstrous creature, and Mao recalls how being with her made the guilt she carried feel a little lighter. The feeling stemmed from a desperate hope. Seeing Eren, battered but alive after a fight, made Mao feel like she could finally make up for the life she had failed to save in her past. But that hope crumbled. In the end, she was merely being protected again. The memory of an injured Eren apologizing to her only deepened Mao's sense of failure and shame. Returning to the present, she explained the aftermath to Kazuya. After their party disbanded, she became terrified of being around anyone. She refused to join another team, isolating herself in the guild to work solely on dismantling monster parts. That, she admitted, was why she had initially planned to refuse his offer to team up. She had been ready to apologize and decline his offer, but a conversation with the guild receptionist, Harumi, gave her the push she needed. In a flashback, Mao confessed her fear to Harumi, insisting she would only drag Kazuya down. Harumi listened, her expression serious as she questioned if Mao was truly sure about her decision. Harumi's words caught her off guard. She revealed that Kazuya believed in Mao, then gently advised her to just take things one step at a time. Her friend's encouragement was simple yet profound. Mao needed to start believing in herself, too. Her story finished, she looked toward Kazuya, the weight of what happened back then finally shared. A genuine smile spread across her face as she thanked him for asking her to join. She recalled her old belief that it was easier to be alone, but also remembered watching classmates and even a powerful senior grow stronger by working together. She reflected on the adventurers she had seen, realizing they all had someone they wanted to be strong for. Hearing this, Kazuya's expression hardens with resolve. He declares that if that is the secret to getting stronger, then he wants to try it too. His earnestness makes Oda Mao laugh, and she remarks that he really never changes. In response, Kazuya quietly clenches his fist, a silent vow passing between them. The tension breaks into mutual smiles. Both Kazuya and Mao agree that they look forward to working together. With the sun beginning to set, Mao suggests they head back, reminding him of his promise to be home for dinner. As they prepare to leave, a small, fluffy sheep-like creature bounds into the clearing. Mao teases Kazuya, noting his surprisingly cute reaction, but he curtly tells her to mind her own business. The creature suddenly bolts. Mao clicks her tongue in annoyance, having thought it had taken a liking to them, while Kazuya notes that it took off like a bullet. He watches it vanish into the undergrowth, wondering aloud if a tamed monster can just run away so suddenly. His question is answered by a sudden shift in the air. Both he and Mao are startled as they see the small creature confronting a massive, growling beast. Kazuya realizes with a start that it didn't run away. It went to fight. Without warning, the huge draconic monster lunges, its jaws snapping shut around the small sheep creature with brutal force. Otama watches, her eyes wide with shock. As the beast crushes its victim, a new figure is revealed, a young man with dark hair and a chilling, unhinged smile. Below him, the dragon's strange nature is clear. A clock is embedded in its forehead. Ma can only stare, wondering what in the world this creature could be. She and Kazuya find their path blocked by a new, formidable foe. A massive green dragon roars before them, its sheer size filling the cavern. Kazuya recognizes it immediately, identifying the beast as the dungeon's mid-boss. Instead of showing fear, he grins with manic excitement as arcs of electricity begin to crackle around his body. A pair of glasses materializes on his face as he declares the dragon's appearance to be perfect timing, revealing he had been waiting for an opportunity to test a new spell.